Good afternoon, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. We are here to bring you live coverage as NASA announces whether the two astronauts on the Boeing Starliner test flight, who are currently at the International Space Station, Suni, Williams, and Butch Wilmore, whether they will come home on the Boeing Starliner or whether the astronauts will wait until next year to come home on a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft. What will happen? NASA is supposed to announce their decision in about a half an hour. They are going to give an announcement, and they're going to give a news conference with the announcement. So we're going to bring you live coverage. This Starliner spacecraft went on what was supposed to be roughly an 8-day test flight on June 5th, and that was well over 2 months ago. So what was supposed to be a week-long mission has become a almost 2.5-month mission now, more than 2.5 months. And this crew, the two-person crew, might be stuck there until February. And also, more importantly, I guess you could say, is whether they will be able to take their original spacecraft back, or whether the spacecraft will be sent home empty. And they might have to wait for a SpaceX spacecraft to take them home, and that would be February. So we are going to bring you live coverage here of this news conference. It is coming up in 27 minutes, and the announcement is supposed to be made at the news conference. And we're going to take your comments and questions on the air. So you can give me a shout during the broadcast. At Lookner is where you can reach me, at Lookner. I really appreciate you guys being with us today. And also a big thanks to our moderators. Thanks so much to Danny James is here moderating. Hello, Danny. Thank you for being here. Also, Angel Shark. Hello, Angel Shark. Good to see you as well. Angel Shark is here moderating too. Also on YouTube, that is. Over there on X, we have Linda Belk and Larry who moderate for us. On Twitch, we have A Moment of Lovely, Big Ball of Yarn, I Got That Fire, Sarah, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev. Thank you. And thanks, Sarah, for subscribing. And I want to say thanks to our Facebook moderators. Yes, we'll discuss this. The reason that they would not take the Boeing spacecraft home, the Boeing Starliner craft home, is that it experienced some issues during the flight, on the way up there, with helium leaks and thruster problems. And NASA is just not sure they got a handle on what is wrong with it and whether it's fixed. And well, maybe they're sure now, but they've been unsure so far, and they They didn't want to send the crew back on the Starliner if they thought there was too great a risk of something going wrong. So let's see here. Hey, thanks to Ava Knight, who is moderating, and Margaret Riley moderating over there on Facebook. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Christina Neal, Ronald Egnor, thank you. Margaret Riley, did I say? Thank you. Okay, so, and thanks to Debbie James and Eamon O'Leary for the gift memberships. That's so nice of you, Debbie James and Eamon O'Leary. Thank you. Now, what I wanted to do is, I want to show you a little background here, if I can. Here. Look, guys, right here. NASA will decide Saturday if Boeing's new capsule is safe enough for two astronauts to fly two astronauts back from space. It's a little summary here from Associated Press. So let me. Do they have a picture of the crew here? That would be nice. Yes, they do. It is Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore are the two crew members, and they are. I guess you could say they've been stuck up there because, I mean, they could have left if there was an emergency, but they were supposed to only be up there for around a week, and they've been up there over 2.5 months. It could be up there till February of next year. Okay, NASA said it will decide this weekend, specifically today, whether Boeing's new capsule, the Starliner, which you see a picture of right there, is safe enough to return its two astronauts from the International Space Station where they've been waiting since June. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and other top officials are actually, I think they're meeting right now in Houston. An announcement is expected from Houston once the meeting ends. That's what we're going to watch, the announcement during their news conference. Astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams launched aboard Boeing Starliner on June 5th. The test flight quickly encountered thruster failures and helium leaks so serious that NASA kept the capsule parked at the space station as engineers debated what to do. And what's made it more difficult for NASA is, so they don't have this spacecraft on the ground, obviously, to run tests on it. The spacecraft is docked to the International Space Station. So they've been trying to diagnose the issues with the spacecraft. But as you can imagine, it makes it more difficult when the spacecraft is not back at NASA, but it's attached to the International Space Station. SpaceX could retrieve the astronauts, but that would keep them there up to until next February. They were supposed to return after a week or so at the space station. If NASA decides SpaceX is the way to go, Starliner would return to Earth empty in September. You know, if that happens, we might cover the empty Starliner flight back to Earth. You never know. We might end up covering that if that happens. Engineers are evaluating a new computer model, says AP, for the Starliner thrusters and how they might perform as the capsule descends out of orbit for a touchdown in the U.S. Western Desert. The results, including updated risk analyses, will factor into the final decision, NASA said. Now, Boeing said earlier this month that extensive testing of thrusters in space and on the ground demonstrated Starliner's ability to safely return the astronauts. So Boeing thinks the spacecraft is safe. We'll see what NASA says. This was the company's first astronaut flight. This was the first manned test flight of the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. The Starliner spacecraft has been delayed for years by a multitude of capsule problems. Two previous Starliner test flights had no one on board. NASA hired Boeing and SpaceX a decade ago, after the space shuttles retired, to ferry its astronauts to and from the station. SpaceX has been at it since 2020. NASA really wants two companies, two different spacecraft, to be made by two different companies to be able to bring their astronauts back and forth to the space station, just to have a backup in case something goes wrong with one of them. But the Boeing Starliner has been delayed for years, and this was its first manned flight. Again, it was supposed to be a week long, roughly an 8-day mission, and Well, now they've been up there over 2.5 months. So what is NASA going to decide? I want to take some comments from you guys. At Lookner on X is where you can reach me. Let me read some comments from the chat as well. But we're going to find out this decision. Let me put it on the screen again here. Let me put it on the screen again. No, that's not what I want. Right here. There it is. You can see it's supposed to be in 20 minutes. You can see it says NASA's Boeing Crew Flight Test News Conference, 20 minutes. Let's see what you guys have to say. We'll do a poll. Let's do a poll. This is perfect for a poll because there's 2 choices. Okay. All right. So the poll is, will the crew come back on Starliner or on SpaceX Crew Dragon? That's the question. Will they come back on the original Boeing Starliner craft that they went there on, or will they come back on the SpaceX Crew Dragon? Let's see what our viewers think. I am going to post this right now in the chat. Hang on. I am posting it right now in the YouTube chat. Now I'm going to post it in the Twitch chat, and we're going to see what you guys have to say. What do you guys think NASA will do? I'm going to shorten it on Twitch because Twitch has a limit to questions. I'm going to say on Twitch, I'm going to say, will they come back on Boeing Starliner or on SpaceX? You know what I mean, hopefully, on Twitch. Okay, let's see what our viewers are saying. Let's see what our viewers are saying. Our YouTube viewers, in response to this question, are saying, I'm going to show you right now. Look at this. 84% of our viewers say they are coming back on SpaceX Crew Dragon on YouTube. Wow. So YouTube is thinking, hey, what happened to the poll? Did the poll not get posted on Twitch? Twitch, are you not seeing a poll? I just made a whole poll on Twitch. Did it not post? What happened here? Ugh. I literally did a whole poll on Twitch. Hold on. I don't know what happened. It says a poll is already active. It's so crazy. I just tried to post a poll, and it says a poll is already active on Twitch, but nobody can see it. Oh, some people are saying it's there. I can't see it. Why can't I see it? I can't even see my own poll on Twitch. What if I refresh the page? It's not there. Literally can't see my own poll. Sarah said, this happened to me yesterday for the poll. I literally cannot see my own poll on Twitch. I have no idea how people are voting. Some people say it's there. Well, this seems to be an issue over on Twitch. Maybe I can try something else. That's problematic. Let's try it a different way.
Of course, the team.
Oh,
Legend, thank you very much.
Okay, hold on. All right. What if I try it this way? It's just not working. Somebody in the chat will have to tell me because I literally can't see my own poll. It's really stupid. It's really stupid. Stupid. Chat. Oh, how about here? I'm not dealing with this right now. Twitch, you're broken. It's not working. Okay. So according to our viewer Rainier, over on Twitch, 80 to 20 for Starliner or SpaceX? Okay. Multiple viewers now are saying it's 80% on SpaceX for Twitch at Twitch and 20% for Starliner. I gotta write. I'll write to message a Twitch to Twitch after. Mods, if any of you are having this issue with Twitch where you can't see it, could you message Twitch too and just tell them regarding the polls, because that's really bad. I literally can't see it. Can't see my own poll. Okay. Anyway, so most of you think it's going to be SpaceX and not Starliner. Okay, 15 minutes. I'm going to show you another article on this. Oh, I want to take a few more comments from you. Hold on. Farm Wife says, I am curious what the two of them will get paid for being stuck in space. That's an interesting question. I don't know. Hang on a second here. There they are right there. From Associated Press. All right, I'm ending the poll. I'm ending the poll. Joe Dirt says the crew is on a 5-year mission now. Well, no, it seems like the two options are come home sooner on Boeing Starliner or wait till February. Why do they have to wait too long to go to SpaceX, says Libalula? Because, so there's currently a SpaceX capsule attached, a SpaceX spacecraft attached, but there are already 4 members of the ISS crew, the space station crew, who are supposed to take that current spacecraft down. Here, let me actually show you some explanation here to make this make more sense to you. Hey, by the way, thanks so much to Nick Robinson, who says Boeing really needs to figure their stuff out. Failure after failure the last few years. Now, just to be clear, I don't know what, beside the name Boeing, I would assume that there's a lot of separation between Boeing aircraft and Boeing spacecraft, but I don't know for sure how the whole company works. So I can't really speak to that. But Nick says Boeing really needs to figure their stuff out. Maybe the beginning of the end for them if they're sidelined. Well, there is this question of will NASA keep working with them on this project, or if, if I remember right, in some of the news conferences we've heard, there have been questions about whether ultimately NASA would just decide we're not going to keep working on the Starliner thing. So I believe that's a possibility from my understanding. But I'm not an expert, so don't hold me to that. So also, thank you to Debbie James. That's so kind of you, Debbie. I really appreciate your support. Debbie James, that's very generous of you. Thank you. And thank you again, Nick Robinson. Okay, so we got about like 15 minutes till the press conference. But really quick, let me just go over this. This is from Associated Press. I'm going to kind of skim through here. Could they be stuck at the space station until next year? A decision is imminent. Will 2 NASA astronauts return to Earth soon in their troubled Boeing capsule or wait at the International Space Station for a ride home next year with SpaceX? NASA has been wrestling with that decision ever since Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams arrived at the space station in June on what was supposed to be a week-long test flight, but they're still there. Boeing has expressed confidence in the spacecraft, but there's division within NASA. A final decision is expected today. Very, very soon, you're going to hear it. What's wrong with Boeing Starliner? This is Boeing's first time launching astronauts after flying a pair of empty Starliners that suffered software and other issues. Even before the Williams and Wilmore blasted off on June 5th, their capsule sprang a leak in propulsion-related plumbing. Boeing and NASA judged the small helium leak to be stable and isolated and proceeded with the test flight. But as Starliner approached the space station the next day, 4 more leaks erupted. 5 thrusters also failed. The capsule did manage to dock safely, and 4 of the thrusters ultimately worked, but engineers scrambled, conducting thruster test firings on the ground and in space. After 2.5 months, there's still no full understanding of the thruster malfunctions. All but one of the 28 thrusters seem okay, but the fear is that if too many conk out again, the crew's safety could be jeopardized. The thrusters are needed for the flight's end to keep the capsule in the right position for the critical deorbit burn. Are they stranded? NASA bristles at suggestions that they are stranded or stuck. NASA has stressed from the get-go that in an emergency, the space station, like a fire or decompression, Starliner could still be used by the pair as a lifeboat to leave. A former NASA executive contends the astronauts are kind of stuck, although certainly not stranded. They're safe aboard the space station with plenty of supplies and work to do. If NASA decides to go with a SpaceX return, Starliner would be cut loose first to open up one of the 2 parking spots for U.S. capsules. Before that happens, the 2 astronauts would fashion seats for themselves in the SpaceX Dragon capsule currently docked at the space station. That's because every station occupant needs a lifeboat at all times. But they would not ride. They would not ride the SpaceX capsule currently there. So if they're going to take a SpaceX capsule back, a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft back, SpaceX would launch. It would be the next SpaceX Crew Dragon, which is to be launched to fill the empty slot that the Starliner will be vacating. Why might they have to wait until next year? To make, like Boeing Starliner, SpaceX's Crew Dragon is meant to carry 4 astronauts. To make room for Wilmore and Williams, NASA would bump 2 of the 4 astronauts who are due to launch to the space station in late September with SpaceX. So there's a new SpaceX craft. In addition to the one already there, there's a new one launching in September that's supposed to have 4 astronauts on it. But they could pull 2 astronauts off and leave 2 seats empty. The 2 empty seats would be reserved for Wilmore and Williams, but they would have to remain up there until February. That's because station missions are supposed to last at least 6 months. Some have lasted a year. 2 Russians up there right now will close out a year-long stint when they return in a 3-seat Soyuz capsule in September alongside a NASA crewmate. There's no thought given to ordering up a special SpaceX Express, and the Dragon at the station now is the ride home at the end of September for 4 residents. So there's no room on the Crew Dragon capsule that's currently docked at the space station because all 4 seats on that spacecraft are spoken for. They're taken. Okay? So that's the basic idea of why they would have to wait. They'd have to wait for the next spacecraft capsule to get there. And I know the New York Times article today said they would become basically full-fledged space station crew members until next February. Okay, guys, what is going to happen? Oops, I keep showing you this, but I want to be showing you this. That's what I want to show you right there. So supposedly 8.5 minutes until this news conference, we will find out, is NASA giving up on bringing the 2 astronauts home on the Boeing Starliner spacecraft, the troubled Boeing Starliner spacecraft that took them to the International Space Station, which for what was supposed to be a roughly 8-day mission, and has now been over 2.5 months. Will NASA give up on the Starliner, bringing them home, and have them wait until February to take a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft home? We are going to find out very, very soon, supposedly. And we're going to find out live, and we're going to be watching it. And after, we'll take some of your comments. Most of you, we polled you guys, most of you think that SpaceX is going to go, that NASA is going to go with SpaceX. I did see a post yesterday from, was it 2 days? Yes, 2 days ago, Eric Berger, who is with Ars Technica, who's a space reporter, Eric Berger, he said he was hearing from multiple people that the astronauts would come back on the SpaceX Crew Dragon, but he said that was not official until NASA says so. But that's what space reporter Eric Berger was hearing. Let me actually do a quick check here and see if I have any other reports coming in about this. But we're gonna show you live the announcement in just a few minutes. Marcia Smith, who's a space reporter with Space Policy Online, she says this news conference is still on track for 1 p.m. Eastern in less than 7 minutes. Okay? So as far as I'm aware, this news conference is on track, and we're going to be hearing it very, very soon. What will their decision be? What will NASA's decision be? Wow, we'll have to see live. Thank you so much, JoJo777JLD. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate your support. Thank you. I'm going to read a few more comments now from you guys as we wait just a few minutes until we hear NASA's decision. Let's see here. Our viewer One Sen says, I think they will have to wait. Will they be taking questions? Yes. It is a news conference. Tyler Lambert said, will they be taking questions? That would be a yes, unless they change their plans, because currently it is planned to be a news conference. And typically they would take questions. We've covered a couple of these things and they've taken questions. Let's see. Mr. Jack Hackney says, maybe they let astronauts make the decision based on the risks. That's an interesting thought. You know, first of all, that's not what's happening. I know that's not what's happening because we've heard that this is going to be NASA's decision. But you know, I feel like I would have to go back and listen. I feel like maybe the last press conference we covered, something like that was asked about, but I'm not sure. I feel like a reporter asked something like, "Do the astronauts have like an input on this?" But from everything, from my understanding, it's NASA's call. They're the ones who are. That is their job to make that call. But that's a good question about whether they have any input or not. Do they even discuss the options with them? That I don't know. I feel like maybe you can go back and listen to the last press conference. We covered it. You can find it on the NASA site. But I want to say it was asked about. Anyways, I have no knowledge that the astronauts get a say in this. I think they're again, that my understanding is that they're just going to do what that NASA says is best to do. But I don't know what happened in this case specifically. Thank you, Shaf, for your support. Thanks for the gift membership, Shaf. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Guys, 4 minutes. 4 minutes. You can see that clock in the corner there. Less than 4 minutes until this announcement. Oh, thank you so much, Nick Robinson. Nick says the pay is normal. Nick believes it's that they're paid by the year, and he says they're active duty military. Starliner is a division of Boeing, the same as the builder of the airplanes. So thank you, Nick. So Nick believes, I can't confirm this right now with my limited knowledge, Nick believes that the astronauts are paid by the year and that they're not paid differently whether they're in space or not. That's a good question. Maybe Nick might be right. Again, I just want to be clear that I don't know. But I could see that being the case. Maybe if I have time after the press conference, I'll look it up. It's a good question. I wish I had better knowledge for you. Thank you so much, Nick, for your support. Guys, 3 minutes until the press conference is supposed to start. Will the two astronauts who took the Boeing Starliner spacecraft on its first manned test flight to the International Space Station on June 5th, they were supposed to stay there about a week. Well, now they're still there because there were issues with the Starliner spacecraft, helium leaks, thruster problems. NASA so far has not been satisfied. They really understand what's wrong with the spacecraft and can really be totally confident in it coming home. But maybe they've changed. Maybe at this point they have enough information and they're confident enough now. So the question is, will the astronauts take their original spacecraft, the Boeing Starliner, home? And that would be on the sooner side, I would assume. Or will they end up taking a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft home? They'd have to wait till next February for that. And in that case, the Starliner would fly home empty. And again, if that happens, it would be interesting to cover the Starliner empty flight home to see if it actually made it home all in one piece. So hopefully it would. Anyways, less than 2 minutes now until this is supposed to start. NASA has not gone live yet. We're looking at their page here. Ooh, you know what I got to do? I got to move this over so you can see the logo. Well, it says NASA, but I'm going to move it over. I'm going to move this over a little bit because I'd like to have the logo on the screen. Oops, hang on a second here. Yeah, I got to get that logo up there. So let's do this. There we go. There we go. 1 minute and 13 seconds, but they have not gone live on their stream yet. So They need to go live on their stream before the broadcast is actually live. So let's see if they actually go live. Hold on. They just went live. They just went live. Look at that. I told you. Starting soon. Breaking news. Breaking news. They just went live. Look at that. Just as I was talking about it. There we go. Starting soon, NASA's Boeing Crew Flight Test Status News Conference. They are playing music. So what I need to do is shush the music, but let it so I can hear it. It's going to be, we'll know anyway because it's going to be, hold on a second here. We're going to see video. We're going to actually see video. So we'll see and hear them. All right, guys, here we go. Get ready. Get ready. And it still says 1 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you so much, Randy Hearn. Randy says, Starliner is not a division of Boeing. There are two divisions, commercial and space defense. People forget Boeing built the ISS, me included. Thank you, Randy, for your support. Maybe we can talk about that more after the press conference, because I think that's an interesting topic. And I am not an expert here. Thank you, Randy, for your support. Oh, hold on. Oh, they're still playing the music, and we have no video yet. Yeah, I would like to get some more on that. Maybe I can look it up here. I just want to keep an eye on this. I don't want to miss the start of it. I don't want to miss the start of it. I will tell you that Wikipedia says Boeing Defense, Space, and Security is a division of the Boeing Company. Boeing Defense, Space, and Security. And the Boeing Company has three primary divisions: Boeing Commercial Airplanes, Boeing Defense, Space, and Security, and Boeing Global Services, according to Wikipedia. Guys, we're waiting any moment now. You're watching it. We're waiting for NASA's decision on the Boeing Starliner crew. Will they take the Boeing Starliner home from the International Space Station? Or will they have to wait until February and take a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft home, and the Boeing Starliner would come home empty? We are waiting to find out right now. Thank you, Janet Burnett, for your support. Janet, that's so nice of you. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of our moderators who are here with us. I really appreciate all of our moderators. Thank you. Sabrina is moderating. Thank you, Sabrina. We are live, by the way. I'm just checking. Yeah, they're still playing their music, which I can't play, but they're still playing their music. Linda Belk and Larry moderate for us on X. Thank you to all of our mods who are here right now. Maybe I can shout out the mods for a second. Sorry if I miss any of them. On Twitch, hang on a moment. Oh, no. We have A Moment of Lovely, Big Ball of Yarn, David Green, Hearsay, I Got That Fire, McBritches, Sarah, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev, thank you. And over there on Facebook, Ava Knight, and Margaret Riley, and Ronald Egnor, and Christina Neal, thank you. And any others I might be missing, thank you. All right, you are waiting. I'm waiting just like you. I have no more information on when they're going to start. Well, any time now is when they're going to start because it's live. But at some point, this will just become, it'll become the broadcast. They are still playing the on hold music. Everybody is waiting. So we did a poll earlier, in around 80%, a little more than 80% of you guys thought that NASA would go with the SpaceX option, which would be February. They originally left on June 5th, and they were supposed to be up there for a week or so. And it's now over 2.5 months later. Whew. Well, we're just waiting. They're still playing the music, guys. What can I tell you? They're still playing the music. We're still waiting. We are still waiting. Everyone is waiting. Now, there hasn't been an announced delay, though. So let me just check some of my space people I follow and see if anybody's posting anything about this. But we're still waiting. Oh, Eric Berger has an update. Eric Berger with Ars Technica, who's a space reporter, says he posted 7 minutes ago. He's at the Johnson Space Center. He's at the press conference. He says there are no clues from the setup what they're going to announce. The event is scheduled for 1. It could slip a bit. It could be a bit delayed, but not expecting significant delays. So one reporter says no official delay, and another reporter says not expecting a significant delay in this press conference. But everybody's just waiting. Everybody's waiting. Christy says, how long could they stay where they are? They are fine in terms of supplies and staying up there. Let's see here. By the way, in this AP article I was reading before, they say this is not the first time astronauts have had their stay extended. NASA's Frank Rubio and his true Russian crewmates ended up spending just over a year in space after their docked Soyuz capsule was hit by space junk and leaked all its coolant. An empty Russian capsule was sent to bring them back last September. Also, in terms of there being resources, yes, there are enough resources for them on the space station. That is not a problem. They do periodically send like supply spacecraft up there. So there's no issue in terms of them staying up there until February in terms of food, water, air, that kind of thing. The Associated Press says that on that issue, a U.S. supply ship arrived earlier this month with clothes, along with extra food and science experiments for the 9-person crew. A Russian cargo ship soon followed. As for air, the space station has its own oxygen generating systems. And you might wonder why. So Boeing, NASA already has the SpaceX Crew Dragon that's working to bring crew back and forth to the International Space Station. Why do they care about, why not just stop there? Why have Boeing keep working on the Starliner spacecraft? Well, according to Associated Press, NASA deliberately hired 2 companies to get its crews to and from the space station, just as it did for delivering cargo. The space agency considered it an insurance policy of sorts. If one crew or cargo provider was grounded, the other could carry the load. And this expert told AP, former NASA executive Scott Hubbard told AP, you want to have another alternative both for cost reasons and for safety reasons and options, so NASA needs Boeing to be successful. The goal is to send up 1 Crew Dragon and 1 Starliner every year with crews 6 months apart until the space station is retired in 2030. SpaceX has been doing it since 2020. So we're waiting here, guys. It is now 1:07 p.m. As you can see, the intended start time was 1 p.m. They have not started yet. They're supposed to start any moment now. No one knows exactly when they're going to start. They have been meeting. What they've been doing is meeting and discussing this. They actually posted... NASA said that NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and leadership will hold an internal agency test flight readiness review today. About an hour after that, about an hour later, NASA will host a live news conference at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So I assume they're done with their meeting. I don't know for sure. But NASA has been meeting today, right before this news conference, basically to finalize their decision and finalize what to do. So we're just waiting. We're just waiting right now. We'll see. I'm waiting along with you guys. Let me just see if there's any more reporting on this. I'll take a few more comments. Haven't seen anything about a delay. Let's see. William Harwood, who is a CBS space reporter, says we're standing by for the start of the NASA news briefing. Marcia Smith, space reporter, says we're still waiting for the NASA news conference. So everybody's waiting. Okay. Skarmis Brugger says, hanging on. Richard Clark says, I'll be here all day and night. Yes, there are 2 astronauts, 1 man and 1 woman, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore. Those are the 2 astronauts. They have been now up there for over 2.5 months. Our viewer, Luni Bruniful, says, just get SpaceX to do it, problem solved. I don't know if anybody from Boeing will be at the news conference. This is a NASA news conference, so I wonder if there'll be Boeing people there too. I do not know. I do not know. It is now 1:09. It is now 1:09. We are still waiting for the news conference to start. Just to summarize what's going on, if you just joined the stream, Boeing has been working on a spacecraft to help take crew members to and from the International Space Station. SpaceX already has such a craft. That craft, the Boeing spacecraft, has been delayed by years. Finally, on June 5th, they did their first manned test flight of the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. It flew to the International Space Station. It was supposed to stay there about a week, but there were a number of issues with the spacecraft during the flight. There were some helium leaks. There were some thruster issues, and NASA has been concerned about using that spacecraft to bring the astronauts home. They've been trying to figure out why these issues happened and trying to satisfy themselves that the spacecraft is safe enough to bring these astronauts home. And this decision has been delayed, and they're going to decide today, and they're going to announce their decision today. And it's going to be according to reports, it's going to be one of 2 decisions. Either they say, yes, Boeing Starliner spacecraft is good to go. We're bringing them back home in the original spacecraft that they went up there in. If they say that, I assume it'd be pretty soon they come back. But the other option is to say no. Instead of having them take that original spacecraft, the Boeing spacecraft, we're going to have to them take one of the SpaceX spacecraft home. If that happens, they need to wait till February, because the 4 seats on the current SpaceX spacecraft that's attached to the International Space Station are already taken up by people who are crew members on the International Space Station. So they would have to wait. If NASA says we're going with the SpaceX spacecraft, the current crew would have to wait. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. We're about to start here. All right, they're playing music. As soon as live event, news conference, breaking news. Here we go.
Good afternoon, and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center. I'm Mira Bernstein in NASA's Office of Communications. Thank you for joining us today and for an update on NASA's Boeing Starliner crew flight test. To give you an update, we have NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, Associate Administrator Jim Free, Associate Administrator for Space Operations Ken Bowersox, Commercial Crew Program Manager Steve Stitch, International Space Station Program Manager Dana Weigel, and Flight Operations Director Norm Knight. We'll be taking questions from those in the room and over the phone. As a reminder, you can press *1 to get into the queue. But first, I'd like to hand it over to Administrator Nelson for opening remarks.
Thanks. NASA has decided that Butch and Suni will return with Crew 9 next February, and that Starliner will return uncrewed, and the specifics in the schedule will be discussed momentarily. I want you to know that Boeing has worked very hard with NASA to get the necessary data to make this decision. We want to further understand the root causes and understand the design improvements so that the Boeing Starliner will serve as an important part of our assured crew access to the ISS. I have just talked to the new Boeing CEO, Kelly Ortberg, I have expressed this to him. I told him how well Boeing worked with our team to come to this decision. And he expressed to me an intention that they will continue to work the problems once Starliner is back safely, and that we will have our redundancy and our crewed access to the space station. This whole discussion, remember, is put in the context of we have had mistakes done in the past. We lost 2 space shuttles as a result of there not being a culture in which information could come forward. We have been very solicitous of all of our employees that if you have some objection, you come forward. Space flight is risky, even at its safest, and even at its most routine. And a test flight by nature is neither safe nor routine. And so the decision to keep Butch and Suni aboard the International Space Station and bring the Boeing Starliner home uncrewed is a result of a commitment to safety. Our core value is safety, and it is our North Star. And I'm grateful to NASA and to Boeing for their teams, for all the incredible and detailed work to get to this decision. Turn it over to Jim.
Thank you, sir. Thank you and Deputy Administrator Melroy for your support along the way, and certainly for being here today. It means a lot. I'd like to communicate to all of you that we've come to this decision using our program, our mission directorate, and our agency level processes. That includes the decisions that happen at the commercial crew program, at the space operations mission directorate level, and the agency level, and includes all of our technical authorities from engineering, safety, medical, and flight operations. As the administrator said, our focus is on safety all the time, and this certainly is no different. The uncertainty in our margins is where we have come to make the decision that the administrator laid out. That uncertainty remains in our understanding of the physics going on in the thrusters, and we still have some work to go. You'll hear more from others on the specifics, but I'll tell you that the NASA and Boeing team have made incredible technical progress in the model development that has gone on, the thruster testing, understanding material properties within the valve, and the complicated fluid physics that are happening inside. We will continue to learn. We are a learning organization, and I think we've demonstrated that here. We'll learn from this effort so that our crews, who are at the top of the pyramid on these missions, and their families can continue to know we've done that and we'll always do our best. For our team, our programmatic and technical teams, both NASA and the Commercial Crew Program, in the Space Station Program, and our Boeing teammates have worked endlessly to get to launch, and certainly in the past 2 months. They've done this while the whole world has gone on around them. A hurricane through Florida, a hurricane through here, while their homes are damaged and without power, they came to work. Some of them lost family members along the way. Their kids went back to school and life in general went on, but they were here every day working long hours. They have persevered, and I want them to know how grateful I am that they are on our team. This has not been an easy decision, but it is absolutely the right one. Let me turn it over to Ken Bowersox and thank Ken and all the leaders here and the ones that are not here with us today for their work.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks to you and the administrator for joining us for this press conference and for our meetings. So you guys have been heavily involved, and we appreciate that. I also want to thank everybody who's here in the room with us and watching online. It says a lot that you're with us on a Saturday, and I want you to know how much we appreciate your support as we work to fly our mission safely. I'm really proud of the NASA team and the Boeing team for all the work they've been doing the last couple of months. It's really been impressive to see how they've been very agile in testing, gathering data, and completing analysis. And then having the tough discussions that go along with processing that data and coming to conclusions. Our intent today was to have the first part of a flight readiness review. The goal of that review was to come up with a NASA recommendation on whether we should proceed with the crewed flight test, either crewed or uncrewed. Our Boeing partners told us that they would be able to execute either option, and they thought that the call belonged to NASA because of our wider view of all the risks involved. We conducted a poll. All of the organizations on the polling sheet indicated that they thought we should proceed uncrewed with the flight test. And so our next step will be to process toward that uncrewed flight test. To finish those preparations, and we'll have another part 2 of the readiness review Wednesday or Thursday next week, we believe, to make sure that we're ready for undock and to complete the test. We are still in the middle of a test flight. We have to remain vigilant. We need to get the vehicle back on deck, go through the data, and once we've done that, we'll start thinking about our next steps for Starliner's next flight. And now I'd like to pass the mic to Steve to share more info and more details.
Thanks, Ken, and thanks for the kind words. I want to thank all of you for being here, and the public and everybody for following our progress over the summer. It's been a long summer. It's been a long summer for our team, and I want to first start out by thanking our team who's worked so hard over the summer, long hours, weekends, nights, testing, analysis, reviews. I mean, it has just been an incredible effort by the team. We are dealing with a very complex issue with the thrusters, and I'll talk more about that, but it's challenging to predict their performance. It's challenging to predict the temperatures we'll see, and so that's why it's been tough, and it's taken the time ever since we docked back on June 6th to get to this point. Very proud of the due diligence that the team has displayed, their perseverance, their fortitude, courage, dedication, resilience as they learned more and we got more data and different results at times than we expected. I especially want to thank the Boeing team and their contractor team, Aerojet Rocketdyne, the engine manufacturer, the valve manufacturer, Moog, all their suppliers that participated, along with the NASA workforce. We have brought in expertise from just about every NASA center. We did testing at the Marshall Space Flight Center. Of course, our White Sands test facility did testing on the thrusters. So this has been a huge effort across all of NASA within the commercial crew program and even beyond. Determining the position to bring Starliner back uncrewed was very difficult for me personally. We're all committed to the mission, which we started out, which is to bring Butch and Suni back. But as we got more and more data over the summer and understood the uncertainty of that data, it became very clear to us that the best course of action was to return Starliner uncrewed. And I'll talk about the other aspects of the mission in a little bit. The bottom line relative to bringing Starliner back is there was just too much uncertainty in the prediction of the thrusters. If we had a model, if we had a way to accurately predict what the thrusters would do for the undock and all the way through the deorbit burn and through the separation sequence, I think we would have taken a different course of action. But when we looked at the data and looked at the potential for thruster failures with a crew on board, and then getting into this very tight sequence of finishing the deorbit burn, which puts the vehicle on an entry, and then immediately maneuvering from that into a SEP sequence to separate the service module and crew module, It was just too much risk with the crew, and so we decided to pursue the uncrewed test flight. The path forward now is to, as Ken said, work toward the Flight Readiness Review Part 2. Well, we review now. We know the scope of the mission. We know it's an uncrewed test flight. We are changing the separation sequence that we planned, and we will review those aspects at the readiness review. We're going to go with a simplified separation technique to get away from station a little more quickly. We'll get to the deorbit burn and execute that nominally. We have a good setup in terms of the opportunities into the White Sands Space Harbor for a number of opportunities in September. We'll land or undock in early September, and then we have a lot of work to do relative to the rest of the mission, which is Butch and Suni stay on the space station for some time, and they return on Crew 9. We're configuring that spacecraft with a couple extra, 2 different seats. So we'll have 2 different crew members, 2 crew members on that vehicle, and then we'll have it ready to bring Butch and Suni home. So they'll be ballast in 2 seats on the uphill. We also have to work to reconfigure the Crew 8 vehicle. When Starliner undocks, it will undock first, and then the Crew 8 vehicle will serve as the lifeboat for Butch and Suni. We have a configuration on the cargo pallet we'll go put in place. So again, we'll get Calypso home when we're ready to do so. We're going to take our time taking the steps, each step along the way. We'll have an important simulation ahead of that flight readiness review with the flight control team. You know, if you put yourself in their place, they have practiced for 2 years to bring a crew home on Starliner. There are some differences in executing the undock sequence and the coast to the deorbit burn and the deorbit burn without a crew, and so they're going to practice that next week. I'm extremely grateful for the commercial crew program, the entire team. It's an honor to represent them here today, and I'll turn it over to Dana Weigel.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you all very much for being here, for your interest in this historic test flight mission and also in the International Space Station. As you heard, with the decision to leave Butch and Suni on board till February, they'll be with us on station for 8 months. I think most of you know our normal expedition durations are 6 months long, but we have had a number of flights with astronauts who've stayed on board with us for 12 months at a time. So this 8-month stay is very much within our normal operational experience base. While Butch and Suni are on board, they'll be doing science, station maintenance. They'll execute the SpaceX 31 research and cargo mission, and we may have a couple spacewalks for them towards the end of their expedition. Since they've been up there, they've been a welcome set of helping hands. They've already done about 100 hours of work on 42 different experiments, and they've helped us with some of the critical station maintenance that we've had on board. For us, looking forward, the station team is focused on the planning and the rework for the undock, the Starliner undock. As you heard from Steve, that's targeted for early September. Before we hit that undock window, we're going to do the work to reconfigure the Crew 8 Dragon. We'll probably do that within the next week or so to have that in place for a 6-crew contingency return capability. And just to reiterate, as Steve said, this just gives us a contingency capability after Starliner departs and before the Crew 9 vehicle arrives. Crew 9 with 2 crew will launch no earlier than September 24th. We'll do a normal handover between the crews, and then we'll have Crew 8 undock. After that, we will relocate the Crew 9 vehicle, so that Dragon vehicle will be relocated to open up the forward port for the SpaceX 31 cargo mission, and we're planning that mission somewhere in mid-October. In between all of that, we've got a Soyuz crew exchange. That's happening September 11th, will be the launch of 73S. That'll be carrying NASA astronaut Don Pettit, and then Tracy Dyson will go home after that Soyuz exchange. So we've got a lot of busy activities in front of us this fall. On behalf of the station program, I do want to thank the entire team, the commercial crew program, the Boeing team, and all of our technical teams. They've done a tremendous amount of work over the summer, getting us to the point where we have enough data and enough information to make this really critical and difficult decision that we've made today. So very much appreciated. And as I think all of you know, commercial crew program is critical to the success of ISS. So we appreciate everything they've done. And with that, I'll hand it over to Norm Knight.
Thank you, Dana. I want to thank all of you for your continued interest in our mission. And I want to echo my gratitude for the teams on the ground, both Boeing and NASA, and our astronauts on board for their tireless work and effort with this test flight over many years, especially during the last few months. You know, with the dedication to, or the decision to fly Starliner home uncrewed, the ground teams will still be fully engaged, ensuring Starliner returns safely. Now, while the teams are hard at work here on the ground, we also have Butch and Suni living and working 260 miles above our planet. They're giving our teams valuable feedback on Starliner. They've served as an integral part of our on-orbit increment, and they've demonstrated patience, adaptability, flexibility, resilience, and readiness. That's what you get with an American astronaut. They've been eager to contribute to important conversations. They've asked questions. They've seamlessly become part of the Expedition 71 crew, contributing to the important work on board the International Space Station. You know, when you're charting new paths for exploration, there are highs and lows. We all know this. It's part of exploration and moving forward. Spaceflight is hard. The margins are thin. The space environment is not forgiving. And we have to be right. We all know this. This was a tough problem to be solved, and a decision had to be made. I want you to remember, Starliner is a robust vehicle with excellent flying qualities, as evidenced by the manual demonstration accomplished by Butch prior to docking. And Starliner has performed exceptionally well overall, so please don't lose sight of that. This is a test flight, and the thruster issue and the associated investigations will pay huge dividends in the future for human exploration in a great way when Starliner flies again. I am encouraged by the dedication and resilience both the NASA and Boeing ground teams and, of course, our space flyers exhibit. I talked with Butch and Suni both yesterday and today. They support the agency's decision fully, and they're ready to continue this mission on board ISS as members of the Expedition 71 crew. I would also be remiss not to mention that this decision also affects the Crew 9 mission and the astronauts that are assigned to fly in that mission in September. Crew 9 mission will now configure Dragon for 2 crew members and will provide seats for Butch and Suni to return. We're also working to finalize those crew assignments and update the training plan. Those decisions will be made public once they are finalized. I would again like to thank all the teams who have designed, built, and now fly Starliner. Going forward, their hard work will continue to pave the path for expanded human spaceflight exploration. Thanks.
Thanks, Norm. We'll move into the question and answer portion now. We'll open it up again to folks in the room and folks on the phone. If you're on the phone, press *1 to get into the queue. Please clearly state which of our participants you are addressing in your question, and we appreciate you limiting yourself to 1 question. So with that, yeah, in the back.
Mark Strassman, CBS News. This could be for Jim or Ken or Steve. I'll let you decide. My question is about trust. Spaceflight is a business that's built on trust. You trust that everyone's going to do their job. You have to have trust in all your space partners. Boeing essentially said, trust us. We have a spacecraft that is ready to return astronauts home. And NASA went in a different direction. So how now do you begin to rebuild that relationship of trust with Boeing?
You know, I'll start. I don't think it's a trust issue at all. I don't think we're rebuilding trust. I think we're looking at the data, and we view the data and the uncertainty that's there differently than Boeing does. It's not a matter of trust. It's our technical expertise and our experience that we have to balance. And I think Ken said it. We balance risk across everything, not just the Starliner piece. So I don't see it as a trust issue at all. I guess Ken or Stitch.
Well, I would say that we've had a lot of tense discussions, right, because the call was close, and so people have emotional investment in either option, and that gives you a healthy discourse But after that, you have to do some work to keep your team together, right? To keep your team restored and ready for the next issue. And I'll acknowledge that we have some work to do there. It's pretty natural whenever you've had a difficult decision to make. But we're aware of it and we'll work it. And we're committed to continuing to work with Boeing. Steve, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it trust. I would call it a technical disagreement where we get a group of engineers together and they disagree on the risk level of what could potentially happen to the thrusters. Boeing did a great job building a model. Now, the question is that model good enough to predict performance for a crew? All the work we've done is really important also for bringing this vehicle back. We want the vehicle to come back uncrewed. It needs to land at the White Sands Space Harbor, which is where the opportunities are setting up in September. And all the work that we've done, both on the NASA and Boeing side, give us confidence to bring the vehicle back. It has to execute a deorbit burn. It has to do all the things we need it to do, undocking from the space station safely. So I think together we have worked toward that part. There's just a little disagreement in terms of the level of risk. And that's kind of where it got down to. And I would say, it's close. It's very close, and it just depends on, how you evaluate the risk. We did it a little differently with our crew than Boeing did. So.
And Mark, trust is a two-way street, and it's built upon a relationship. And I think, as indicated just an hour ago by the new CEO of Boeing, that they intend to move forward and fly Starliner in the future, which is very important to NASA, that we have two human-rated vehicles. I think you should understand the trust is two ways.
Eric Berger with Ars Technica. Two questions. One for the administrator, just to follow up on that question about Boeing and your discussion with the Boeing CEO, Kelly Ortberg. How do you anticipate that NASA can help Boeing get Starliner operational missions? Could you maybe fly like a cargo mission to support that, or just curious what your thoughts are on that? And then for, I think, Ken Bowersox, curious, when did you think it was likely that Crew Dragon would be the vehicle to bring the crew home, Butch and Suni? From the outside, it does seem like that you saw something perhaps in the White Sands test data that gave you concern. It certainly seemed like that's when the odds seem to shift toward Dragon. Would love any insights on that. Thank you.
Your question to me is best answered by the people that are going to determine the specific testing and what is required before the crew would fly.
Yeah, I can take a cut at that, Eric. So we're going to sit down with Boeing and kind of lay out what's that path, right? I would say the White Sands testing did give us a surprise. We saw in that testing, as we did 5 total simulations with that thruster of a downhill deorbit burn sequence. And so that's when we saw this swelling of the poppet on the oxidizer side. In other words, a piece of Teflon that swells up and it gets in the flow path and causes the oxidizer to not go into the thruster the way it needs to go into. And that's what caused the degradation in thrust. When we saw that, I think that's when things changed a bit for us, in that now we know that's prevalent, and where is it prevalent in other thrusters, and then what could that swelling do in the future. So that's, I think, where we change course. What we have to do now moving forward for Starliner 1 is how do we avoid firing that thruster in a manner that would cause the heating that causes that oxidizer poppet Teflon piece to swell? Can we figure out how to do that with some testing? And can we also have learned recently that the environment in the doghouse, and I think I've talked about this, is hotter than we thought. In other words, when the other thrusters fire in a doghouse, some of that heat soaks back into an individual thruster, and that causes the Teflon to swell. It also causes some vaporization of the propellant. So is there a way we can figure out how to get the doghouse cooler overall? And then thirdly, we see crosstalk sometimes when an OMAC, the orbital maneuvering engine, the big 1,500-pound thruster fires, it then causes heat on one of the adjacent thrusters. So we've got to sit down and go through all those details with Boeing, with Aerojet. The teams have been so focused over the last couple months at understanding
the physics and what's going on, which we have a much better understanding of that now. Now that we have that understanding of the physics, I think we can move forward and start to find mitigations for future flights. Yeah. See if Ken has anything to add.
Well, for me, the White Sands results I thought were a gift. It was just great to have that data. And I really thought it might help us convert. I've seen it with a few of our discussions where we have people in different camps on a risk decision. We gather more data, and then a piece of data comes in, and we come together, and everybody agrees that we take one path or the other. And I thought we might get there until probably about a week ago, I'd say. That's where it started looking like, hey, I just don't think we'll get there in time for bringing Starliner home in a timely manner. With more time, we might have gotten a lot smarter, but we're just at the point where we need to bring Starliner home, take all the data we can, and keep moving forward, I think.
Next question is from Marcia Dunn on the phone lines. Marcia Dunn from Associated Press.
Yes, hi. For you, Ken, I'd like a little more information on how the opinions were split. Was it 50-50, 75 to 25% in favor of SpaceX? If you could just characterize the numbers for and against, and also if you could discuss the mood in the room today. Thank you.
The polling was unanimous amongst all the NASA folks. Boeing expressed the ability to either work crewed or uncrewed. They believe in their vehicle, and they'd be willing to bring a crew home on it. We had some NASA folks that took a broader view of the global risks, who thought that, hey, we probably should keep the crew on the test flight. To say whether that was 15, 20% of the people, I'd have a hard time coming up with that number. But as far as the mood, all of us really wanted to complete the test flight with crew, and I think unanimously we're disappointed not to be able to do that. But that's part of the reason our system is set up the way it is, right? You don't want that disappointment to weigh unhealthily in your decision. And so on purpose, our system increases the volume on some of our voices from the technical authorities, folks that are asked not to think about those emotions, and it helps to pull you away from the fact that you might be disappointed in a certain decision, and then guide you towards that final outcome.
And I would add on the mood in the room, you know, I think everybody is professional and did their jobs, but there is a sense of not accomplishing the mission that we set out to do. And even for myself personally, that is a hard thing to go through. It's a little bit of a situation of loss and feeling like you lost something. And we haven't, in the ultimate long-term view, we have not lost anything, because Boeing, as the Administrator Nelson said, is committed to finding the solutions and flying Starliner again. But I probably can't express in words what it's like when you commit to a mission, you've worked on a mission so long, and then we make a fairly dramatic change, which we have not done in human spaceflight in a long time. And so there's a feeling of loss, and we'll work with our team to make sure we talk about that and we move forward from here, because we need this team to focus not only on returning Starliner safely, but we have a Crew 8 mission to return and reconfigure. We have a Crew 9 launch coming up as well, and we need to focus on all those things. We have a really busy time frame, and we'll do that. We'll talk to the team and make sure they understand that it's nobody's fault, and it's a normal feeling to have this feeling of loss, or that you didn't complete what you intended to do.
Okay, we'll take the next question also from the phone lines from Marissa Para from NBC News.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for doing this. Marissa Para with NBC here. Senator Nelson, this could be for you or for anyone else who wants to join in. We heard a mention of a next space flight for Starliner a couple of times, and we know how much NASA would like to have an alternative to SpaceX, more companies available to provide the ability to shuttle astronauts to the ISS. Senator Nelson, how certain are you that Boeing will ever launch Starliner with a crew on board again?
100%.
100%.
Correct.
There is no shadow of a doubt in your mind. Can you explain why?
Because of what this panel has already told you. The extensive cooperative working relationship between NASA and Boeing, of finding the problem, but knowing that the uncertainties are what held up the crew getting on Starliner to go home, and a certainty on my part that we will find out the uncertainty, and Boeing's willingness to carry through on this program.
All right, next question from the phones, Kristen Fisher from CNN.
Thank you. My question is also for Senator Nelson. Senator, you were a member of the congressional committee that investigated the Challenger accident. You were a senator when Columbia happened. How much did that experience influence your personal decision today? Thank you.
Well, very much. It has affected the decision today by this collective group and all of those that participated in the flight test readiness review this morning. It is a trying to turn around the culture that first led to the loss of Challenger and then led to the loss of Columbia, where obvious mistakes were not being brought forth. For example, give you specifics going back to the loss of Challenger. Even the engineers in Utah, in Morton Thiokol, were begging their management not to launch because of the cold weather. And that information never got up. And that was happening on the very night before the launch the next morning. Another example, on Columbia, astronauts would get through with their flights and they'd inspect the orbiter, and they'd, as a matter of fact, my commander, Hoot Gibson, said he'd look at subsequent flights and he would look like that a shotgun had been shot on the delicate silicon tiles because of so much of the foam shedding off of the external tank. But there was a culture that did not bring that information up to the decision makers. So NASA ever since has tried very hard to bring about an atmosphere in which people are encouraged to step forward and speak their mind. And I think right today is a good example of that.
Do we have other questions in the room? Yep, back left.
Good morning. Cheryl Mercedes here with KHOU here in Houston, Texas. Any of you can answer this question. Just really simply state it to the folks at home who have no idea what these two astronauts are experiencing right now up in orbit. All they're hearing is the technical stuff and what we're reporting. What do you have to say to those folks who are saying, man, these guys simply are going to miss out on the holidays with their families at home? What's it like for them up there? What are they experiencing day to day now with this decision and this news that it will now be months before they return? Thank you.
I'll jump in on this one. First off, all the astronauts on station are professionals. All those qualities I talked about with Butch and Suni, that's exemplified in every astronaut that flies to the International Space Station. They're professionals. When they launch, they know that there are circumstances where they can be on board for up to a year. So mentally, you know that you could be in that situation. Now, once you're in the arena, obviously, it's a little different. It's challenging. It's disappointing that they're not coming home on Starliner, but that's okay. It's a test flight. That's what we do. They knew those risks going in, but we keep them very busy. There's a lot of science and research going on the International Space Station that Dana can elaborate on and has elaborated on. We keep them busy. We keep them working, and they are continuing to pave the road for human exploration going forward. So it's great. They're part of the crew, and they're doing fine.
What do you say to their families?
I care deeply about their families. I know this is a huge impact to their families, and it means a lot. Their families are the pillars that keep them strong. They're the pillars that we at NASA depend on for the workforce to keep us going. They're the pillars that help this team with the crewed flight test have the resilience to keep going, especially over these last 2 months that were needed to go forward. And that's both at NASA and Boeing. So family is the backbone of what we do in the support structure. So I tell their families, thank you. Thank you for their support. Thank you for what they do to allow NASA and our commercial partners to do what we do to explore space.
We're going to go back to the phone lines. Next is Eben Brown from Fox News.
Hi, good afternoon. Eben Brown, Fox News for Administrator Nelson. Sir, I can appreciate all the technical and R&D review here that's being detailed for us, and the investment everyone has in this. But I'd like to ask you about the investment we as taxpayers have given to Boeing over, I think it's at least 15 years now. It's been hundreds of millions from seed money to selecting them as providers for commercial crew. At what point, and I understand this is an oversight issue and it may come from something above the agency, but your career has spanned both the agency and above the agency, and I want to know how or when or what's the process for reviewing this contract to determine we're not getting what we paid for as taxpayers. I say this as knowing that there is a public sentiment that is very skeptical of Boeing as a corporation right now, not just due to this, but also due to their other issues in commercial aviation. So I'd like to know when those discussions happen and how they happen and what gets discussed.
To specifically answer your question, you remember when we started the commercial program, one of the advantages of the commercial program was that it was going to be a fixed price contract. So much of NASA's research and development in a very unforgiving environment, space, that is very hard and is cutting edge technology, and it is very expensive. And as a result, on the normal way of contracting, cost plus, it will run the cost way up. Not so with the commercial crew program. And that was part of the negotiation for both of the companies, Boeing and SpaceX. And they've got a fixed price. And if you check the record, you can find out how much additional Boeing has had to spend. So my answer, you're posturing the question of what I would answer in front of a congressional committee about the cost, is that this program is working like it should. Now, if your question portends something else, then speak it, but I think that's what you were getting at.
Okay, we'll go to Joey Roulette from Reuters.
Thanks. For Bill Nelson, did Kelly Ortberg say when you talked to him whether Boeing would pay for an additional test mission before Starliner gets certified? And for Steve or Ken, I'm reading some contract language from Boeing's most recent modification that says it kind of broadly defines certification as coming after Starliner flies astronauts to and from the ISS. And so I know there's a lot of data that you guys are going to get on the return leg, but since it's coming back empty and based on what we've seen so far, will NASA want to see Boeing fly an additional test mission before it gets its certification, or might NASA change those requirements and certify Starliner anyway?
Joey, it did not come up, nor would it have been appropriate for, in a conversation of which I'm alerting him as to what the decision of the flight test readiness review was, that we would get into those matters.
Yeah, we've started looking at the flight test objectives, what we have already accomplished on this flight and what's remaining. we have not, made a total determination yet of what objectives are in front of us or what we've fulfilled. We'll take a little time to do that. I don't think we have decided on the path yet of another crewed flight test. We have gotten a lot out of this vehicle so far. It's been on orbit now for 2.5 months, which we didn't intend, so we've got a lot of data out of that. We'll have to sit down and talk about the certification aspects after the flight. It's a little premature to do that at this point. So.
Yeah, we need to get the vehicle back on the ground and then analyze the data and be driven by that in our next decision. But I wouldn't rule anything out, right? I mean, we have options for how we move forward. The one thing I do want to emphasize is we plan to work together with Boeing to find that path.
Next, we have Chris Davenport from the Washington Post.
Hi, thanks so much. I guess for Ken Bowersox, I want to follow up on that poll, which you said was unanimous. I wonder if you can give us a number of votes cast that was as part of that poll. Was it like 10-0, 12? How many votes were there? Thank you.
Well, so I'll kind of go through just mentally all the orgs we polled. We unofficially asked the opinion of the NASA Engineering and Safety Center, the Flight Operations Directorate, the Division Director for ISS and Commercial LEO Development at NASA headquarters, the ISS program, the Commercial Crew Program, the Engineering Technical Authority, the Crew Health and Medical Technical Authority, Safety and Mission Assurance Technical Authority. Let's see, who else did I leave out? All the center directors from Stennis, Marshall, JSC, and Kennedy Space Center, where the Commercial Crew Program is officially based. Anybody I missed on that list?
I think you got just about everybody.
Yeah, I think did I get everybody? And that was again, everybody concurred with proceeding uncrewed, and they stated where they might have one or two people during our meeting that had a different opinion and tried to give those folks an opportunity to talk to the group.
We'll go to Micah Maidenberg from Wall Street Journal.
Thank you. For Administrator Nelson and Jim Free, there was a discussion on a previous call about Starliner returning uncrewed, if that would count as a loss of mission or mission failure. What is your view on that? And if you don't agree that it would be a loss of mission or mission failure, could you please explain why? Thanks.
Yeah, Mike, I think let me go back to echo something Steve said. We've accomplished a lot on this mission and learned a lot about this vehicle, satisfied a lot of the objectives already. That stressed here by Steve, stressed on previous press conferences. We'll look at this as we do any of our missions to see, does it fall into any of the categories that we have that we define as a mishap once we get the vehicle back. That's our time to look at that, so I think that's a question I'd save and pose to us on the other side of getting the vehicle back.
We'll go to Izzy Alvarez from ABC.
Thank you. Can you please tell us in layman terms why NASA chose SpaceX to bring Suni and Butch home? How did you come to that decision?
I can take a cut at that, and we'll see. When we looked at, first of all, we looked at the risk of putting Butch and Suni on the Starliner vehicle due to the issues with the thrusters that we've talked about. And so when we looked at that risk, we said that risk was due to the uncertainties, due to the inability to predict with certainty the thruster performance for the rest of the mission, including holding the orientation of the vehicle for the deorbit burn and then maneuvering the vehicle for the separation of the crew module and the service module. When we came to that conclusion, we started looking at what other options, Dana and I both did, what options do we have, because these missions are really jointly shared between the ISS program and Commercial Crew Program. And as we started looking at various options, it was obvious to both of us that the easiest and best option was to configure the Crew 9 vehicle with a couple empty seats on the way uphill, to put ballast in those seats. SpaceX had that capability. We also knew that we had a spacesuit on orbit already that we could utilize for one of the crew members. They've tried that on, and that spacesuit works. Both crew members tried on a spacesuit, so we have a spacesuit now we're going to launch for one of the other crew members on Crew 9. And then we really wanted to give the crew, a suited return like we always have in U.S. space flight. So when we started to weigh all those options, it became very obvious that Crew 9 was the best option, fly up 2 empty seats, have Butch and Suni join the increment crew and return on Crew 9. That just became the easiest, the best option, and the most efficient option for all of us. And I'll see if Dana has anything to add.
Yeah, I would just add that, knowing that this was a test flight, we made the decision a couple of years ago to train and keep Butch and Suni current with all aspects of station, some of the most complex things we do, spacewalks, robotics, some of the research. So we had them trained. They've obviously flown to station before. They've done long duration missions, both of them have. And so, again, when you line that up with our vehicle options and the fact that the Dragon spacecraft is highly automated, as you all know, we've used it for private astronaut missions. We do have a lot of experience taking people with much less training than what our classic training is for our NASA crew and having them fly on Dragons. And so when you look at that in aggregate, it made a lot of sense to make the decision to adjust Crew 9 and have them do a full expedition and come home on a Dragon.
And one thing I'd like to add, a major goal of the commercial crew program is to develop not just the capability to go back and forth to space station, but a generic capability to go back and forth to low Earth orbit to develop a commercial capability. There's two reasons for that. One is dissimilar redundancy. So you have this option where if there's a problem on one vehicle, you might not have the same problem on another vehicle. So you could use them for a return or perhaps keep them flying while another vehicle is working through recovery from some sort of a problem. But it's also to provide some competition in the environment. And competition is healthy in a lot of ways. It causes you to develop your technology. It causes you to get better pricing. And we would like to have that competition in the future. So that's why we have more than one provider we're trying to develop.
Next question is from Kenneth Chang from the New York Times.
Hi, thank you. This is for Administrator Nelson. You expressed confidence that Boeing will continue, but it's also a fixed price contract, so potentially they could lose. They've already written up $1.6 billion. Are you saying that you're confident that they will continue to write off money, losing money on this? And I guess the second question is, has there been any discussion with Aerospace about converting Dream Chaser for crew? Thank you.
On Sierra, I will let somebody else answer that. With regard to Boeing, remember, it's a fixed price contract. We expect delivery on the contract, and therefore, there is no discussion at this point on NASA's part in the question that you pose, which is basically that they've spent X, will they spend Y to get to where Boeing Starliner becomes a regular part of our crew rotation? That's not, I don't have the answer to that, nor do I think we would have the answer now.
And I'll add about Sierra Space. Sierra's working very hard on their first maiden voyage of the Dream Chaser. That's a cargo mission. They've got the vehicle down at Kennedy, and they're working through test and final assembly. So it's the plan that they fly cargo missions to station through the rest of station. And in fact, that's the scope of the contract that we have with them, to provide cargo capabilities. There is no existing contract with the agency for crewed capability, which doesn't mean that that's not a possibility somewhere in the future. In fact, Sierra has their own goals about moving in that direction in the future. But for now, the work and the focus is on getting them flying as a cargo flight. And if you look back to how we started SpaceX and the Dragons, that's a very similar approach. We started with cargo flights first. We flew a number of flights, and then they eventually evolved into the crewed version of the Dragon.
Next question is from Lauren Grush from Bloomberg.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm wondering, can you walk us through what modifications, if any, will be made to Starliner ahead of its return now that it doesn't have a crew on board? And will NASA be flying that return any differently or watching for anything specifically now that it's performing this return without a crew? Thanks.
I'll take the question relative to the reconfiguration of Starliner. There's a few things that we have to do differently. As I said earlier, we're going to modify the separation sequence a little bit to get away from the space station a little quicker than we had planned. So that's one modification. That will be done via ground commanding, and then there will be some time-tagged events in the flight software that they'll execute. There are a few items in the cockpit that have to be configured a little differently. Obviously, if you had a crew on board, some of the life support systems will be configured just like we did on the Orbit Flight Test 2 mission in 2022. We'll use those same configurations. Obviously, we've got to do a little bit of planning relative to the center of gravity without the crew members being in the seats. So we've looked at that already, and that doesn't appear to be a big problem. So we've got a few things like that to go work on. The teams have been really laying out all that data. The ground teams will have a little bit different set of flight rules to operate from. So they'll have that ahead of them. But there's a few minor things to the spacecraft to reconfigure, and we're already in the process of starting that work.
Next question is from Will Robinson-Smith from Spaceflight Now.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Question, I believe, for Dana Weigel, perhaps Steve Stitch. In one of the previous briefings, it was discussed that I think the Russians wanted to see it was 1 or 2 successful full crew rotation missions of Starliner before they would put one of their cosmonauts on the spacecraft. Has the agency had the opportunity to talk to Roscosmos about the path forward and what the options will be for flying cosmonauts to and from the space station with Starliner at this point? Thank you.
Sure. Our focus with all the international partners, as you can imagine, discussions about what's happening on board or changing launches or operations on board involve not just our NASA team, but the entire international partnership. And so similar to the discussions you've heard today, the focus has been on the decision immediately in front of us with what to do with Starliner crewed or uncrewed. And in fact, when we ended the review today, I sent an email out to all of the program managers across the international partnership so they understood the decision. So they've been following along with us. In terms of Roscosmos thinking about our integrated crew exchanges and flying on the Boeing vehicle, they have always maintained that they want to see a few successful flights before they fly crew on it. I don't expect that that'll change, but we're not actively having those discussions right now. Right now we're focused on what to do with Starliner, but of course those are things we'll talk about in the future.
Next question from Irene Klotz at Aviation Week.
Thanks very much. I think this is for Steve. As far as the thruster issues, considering the return of the spacecraft and the performance during OFT 1 and 2, is the primary concern now that because there was the overheating during the approach to station that there's some uncertainty on how these thrusters are now going to perform during the deorbit? And can you also just give us an update on what the status is on Boeing's preparations to return Starliner without crew, and what, if any, additional risks to the spacecraft are, and granted those are far below risks to crew, but if there are any additional risks at this point in bringing Starliner back uncrewed, since that's not the nominal plan? Thanks.
Yeah, good questions, Irene. What I would say is that the thrusters on this flight relative to Orbit Flight Test 2 have experienced higher heating. We had more thrusters fail off, more thrusters see degradation. In fact, one of them failed off, and we haven't hot fired that. We did 2 docked hot fires at ISS, and we've chosen not to utilize that thruster at all. But they've experienced a little more stress, I would say, than the previous flight. Even though the deorbit burn was successful on OFT, the first orbit flight test and the second one, these thrusters have experienced more stress, more heating, And so there's a little bit more concern for how they would perform during the deorbit burn, holding the orientation of the vehicle, and then also the maneuvers required after that. We've also learned in the starboard doghouse in particular, there is extra heating that we have just discovered in the last 2 weeks. And looking at the data a little more closely, anytime an orbital maneuvering thruster fires in that doghouse, there's higher heating. And so we had one thruster on OFT2 in 2022 fail off after the deorbit burn. It would not surprise me to see one of the starboard aft thrusters in that doghouse fail off in the deorbit burn for this flight. So I would say a little higher heating, a little bit more thermal, and a little more uncertainty now that we understand the physics a little bit better for a crew return. In terms of the preps of the vehicle, we've been getting the vehicle prepared. The team is on the ground, really has gone through and looked at the flight software that's on board. Is there any changes that need to be made to mission data loads? This technique of using a very simplified SEP sequence has minimized the changes required on mission data loads. They're going to take the actual software that we plan to use and put it through its paces in the facility that's a hardware software integration facility that Boeing has. The team has been doing practice runs in a training facility. When I say the team, the ground team has been doing runs just to make sure they understand the differences between the uncrewed and uncrewed. And really, I think it's, I would say, unconnecting muscle memory almost. If you've been training for 2 years to do things a certain way with the flight control team on the ground, with the crew on board, where you can make calls to the crew to do certain actions, they now have to take those actions. And so they've been doing those practices. And there's an integrated simulation next week on Wednesday with the ISS flight control team. The undock sequence is always an orchestrated series of events between how ISS gets configured, how we depress the interface between Starliner and the ISS, how we configure the guidance navigation control for the space station and the software. And so they're going to do that integrated practice next Wednesday. And we'll take our time. If that goes well, we'll pick an undock date. And if it doesn't, we need more simulations, we'll go ahead and pivot. We've laid out a schedule that allows us the opportunity to have some flexibility in Starliner undock, and that's been very important for Dana and I.
Next question is from Jeff Faust from Space News.
Good afternoon. Question for Ken Bowersox or Steve Stitch. You mentioned earlier in the briefing that it was a very close decision on deciding to bring back Starliner uncrewed. I'm wondering if you can quantify that in some way. Was there some particular piece of data or missing piece of data that really swayed that decision, that very close decision? Thank you.
So I'll give it from my point of view, the answer, and then Steve can weigh in. If you look at it, we knew going in that the crewed flight test was probably a little higher risk than a typical rotation with Dragon, where we've flown multiple flights. That's why we called it a flight test, right? We had the issues coming uphill, and that raised our risk level and our uncertainty in how much more risk there was. Anytime you change from your nominal plan that you've spent years developing, you increase risk on the other side. And the type of risks I'm talking about are something that we've analyzed for contingency return with the crew on the middeck of the Dragon, or the necessity of sending up new suits where the crews weren't able to try out the pressure suits on the ground so that they would have suits on the Dragon. Those types of things raise your risk a little bit on that side. And so now both of your risk levels have gone up, and you knew going in that one was a little bit higher, and you've got uncertainty on just where it fits. So you have to really dig in to understand what the baseline risk change is. And that's what the team has been working so hard this last couple of months. For me, one of the really important factors is that we just don't know how much we can use the thrusters on the way back home before we encounter a problem because of the heating effects that happened on the way uphill. But Steve can tell you a lot more.
No, thanks, Ken. Yeah, I'll just mention a couple things. One, we had some thruster experts come in and talk to us a few weeks ago, and we are clearly operating this thruster at a higher temperature at times than it was designed for. I think that was a factor that, as we started to look at the data a little bit more carefully, we're operating the thruster outside of where it should be operated in. Understanding, could a thruster just fail off gracefully, or could there be another failure mode that is not so graceful? I think that was an important factor as we talked about the two differences. I mentioned the starboard doghouse, and so for some reason the heating is higher in that starboard doghouse that we do not understand. When an OMAC thruster fires, the other thrusters get heated at a much higher rate than we expected. We don't have a closed loop model to predict the performance. We worked very hard of trying to anchor a model based on what we saw at White Sands, and then knowing what you had in the uphill phase, knowing that you have a model that can replicate what we saw, can you predict the downhill? We really just couldn't get there over the last number of weeks. Also, how close we were to a cliff. In other words, we've damaged the Teflon on some thrusters. So when we start to fire them again, will that damage repeat or get back to a point where now the thrusters are at the levels we saw on the docking day very quickly? And then really it's the consequences of failure. When we started thinking about the kind of failures we might get, we had those on docking day, and those were even though we were 200 meters from station, it's a very benign environment. This sequence, when the deorbit burn has to execute and then you get into the SEP sequence, it's a very rapid sequence from the completion of the burn to then getting into the separation a number of minutes later, and there's no real time to reconfigure. So when we laid it all out, that's where the preponderance of the risk was to not put a crew on the vehicle.
Our next question is from Manisha Ravasetti from Space.com.
Hi, thanks so much for doing this. I think my question is mostly for Dana. I was wondering, what are some of the challenges that you faced in accommodating this delay with ISS operations? I would guess that there are maybe changes you had to make with food allocation or other supplies and task division. And then relatedly, you mentioned that even with this 2025 planned return date, it is the trip is within the scope of what you're comfortable with, for astronauts traveling to the ISS. So what do you think would have been too long for this day, and the point at which we should be, worried about the fact that they're still up there? Thank you.
Let's see, for the first part of your question, just at a high level from a programmatic standpoint, we protect for about 4 months of what we call consumables reserve, so food, water, different kinds of consumables we have on board. Those are the two biggies. 4 months for 4 crew is what we protect for. So we always stay above that amount. And we do that intentionally so that if we had a problem with the delivery, a cargo flight that didn't make it, for example, we'd have margin. So we always have a little more than what we need for some period of time. It's not limitless. In this particular case, we did have a resupply mission. In fact, just a few weeks ago, the Northrop Grumman 21 flight came up, so we had our eye on that flight. And so once we realized the team was working through issues and we were likely to have Butch and Suni on board, we changed that flight's manifest. So we added more supplies to keep us above that reserve level. We've also got the SpaceX 31 cargo flight coming up around the corner, so we've got extra supplies on that. And so we've been able to modify and adjust our cargo mission supplies to accommodate the extra mouths we're feeding. No one has had to go on a diet or calorie restrictions, so we haven't had any limitations there. In terms of duration on board, you ask an interesting question. One of the things as an agency that's really important for us is to understand the impacts of long duration space flight on the crew. And so far our experience base and that of the cosmonaut experience base is up to about 12 months, give or take. And so we understand very well performance implications and what it looks like for operations and crew health there. So you're asking the question about how long is too long. I don't think we as an agency know the answer to that. We can tell you that we understand what 12 months does. We're interested in that for Moon to Mars. And those are some of our research objectives and what we're trying to learn in the microgravity environment, but no specific concerns with 8 months or even up to a year. And so far, our data suggests that as long as we've got the right mitigations on board, exercise. The crew spends about 2.5 hours a day with cardio and weightlifting, and as long as we can keep them in shape with rigorous routines, et cetera, we've done a pretty good job keeping the crew's health up with long duration stay.
Next question is from Tim Fernholz from Payload Space.
Thank you for taking my question this morning. I was just curious if you have any thoughts now on what might have been done to avoid this scenario after OFT2, if more attention should have been paid to redesigning the propulsion system, or if there were decisions that should have been made during the test campaign to avoid the scenario. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take the question. I think if we look back at OFT2 now with this newer lens of what we learned at White Sands, certainly could we have explored OFT2 in a little more detail, either leading to some redesign of the doghouse to get the thermal environment lower or operate the thrusters differently. I think it's easy to do that in hindsight. If we went back and thought about the whole integrated problem a little bit more, could we have done some kind of testing? What I would say is it's very difficult to test the doghouse environment on the ground. You've got thrusters that fire in multiple directions, and it's very hard on the ground to have a test facility, a vacuum chamber that accommodates thruster firings in multiple directions. And then get the thermal right in that doghouse and keep the thermal up. So there was no easy way to do that test on the ground. We thought, obviously, we had done enough analysis to show that the thrusters would be within the temperatures that they were qualified for. Clearly, there were some misses back in qualification. We're going to go through that data in more detail post-flight and then figure out what we can do to go fix them. And then we'll also look at our process. I would say we're going to look at the certification process. I know Boeing's looking at their process as well on how they got here. We're doing the same thing on the NASA side.
Next question is from Sawyer Rosenstein from NASASpaceflight.com.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. Earlier you mentioned that there would be a simplified undocking procedure. Can you kind of explain what that means of what this undocking would be like compared to, say, with Crew, and what the contingency would be if there is an issue at some point with that undocking and burn away from the station?
Yeah, I can answer the question. So normally we would back away from the space station, essentially go out in front and then above the space station, and then eventually end up below the space station and then on a trajectory that goes beneath it and out in front of the space station. That was our normal plan to undock, heading into the flight, before the flight. Now what we're going to do is execute a small number. The undocking itself with the NASA docking system will be exactly the same. We'll use the same techniques. The software will command undocking. We'll drive a sequence of hooks. They'll open up after we've depressurized that area in between the vehicles, and then we'll undock. And there's some springs that push the vehicle away. What we'll do is we'll go through a SEP sequence that puts us on, I would say, what's called a posigrade trajectory. And so we'll end up going, essentially phasing out behind the space station to a safe distance, and then we'll get away from the space station and execute the deorbit burn. So we've used that kind of SEP sequence in the past in other vehicles. We've tested this SEP sequence. It is already in the software. It's one of the breakout sequences that are already in the software. And so what we'll do is just go command that sequence early and use that to get away more quickly. And so it's pretty simple, pretty elegant. It was a great idea by the Boeing team.
Our next question is from David Curley from Full Throttle.
Thank you very much. Steve, Stitch, and Bowersox. I think I heard Stitch say that White Sands testing was kind of the turning point for you, and I thought Bowersox kind of went in a little different direction there. And it seems to me that Boeing and NASA drew different conclusions from those tests, NASA believing that there were potential for losing some of the thrusters. Boeing said at the time that they got pretty close to root cause and were probably within reasonable risk to use them. So did you get to two different conclusions? And was it actually the key factor, the White Sands test, that led to this decision today? And did I hear that you're not ruling out the potential of a 4-person crew for a next Starliner flight?
So let me start with the first question. I think Steve was talking about how we process the data. I was talking about being encouraged by the fact that we had new data. Anytime you have new data, it means that you can analyze it and find out that things are proceeding well, and you can converge the team with that new data. What Steve found was maybe a little bit different, and that's why it probably sounded different how we reacted.
Yeah, I would say at White Sands we were excited, and that was really a turning point in that we were able to replicate the loss of thrust. We simulated the uphill profile, in other words, how the thrusters fired from the launch sequence and on orbit all the way to docking. We did 2 of those uphill sequences, and then we did a number of downhills. And so we were encouraged when we saw that we could actually see thrust degradation in those downhill runs. What then was new is once we took the thruster apart and we looked at the valve on the oxidizer side, we saw this swelling on the Teflon seat, which when we talked to the vendor, Aerojet Rocketdyne, they had never seen this before in this particular thruster. And so I think that's where there was a change in the risk posture. Initially, we were somewhat excited by replicating the damage, or the degradation in the thrust, but then when we looked a little more closely, we saw this swelling on the Teflon, and then that gave us a whole new idea of the physics involved in the failure mode, and then that led us to study that failure mode a lot more in the last few weeks. Relative to the 4-person Starliner crew, we haven't really had those discussions yet. We need to get the vehicle back. We need to work through our sequence of events on what changes we'll make, both for the helium leaks and the thrusters, and then we'll make a decision on the next flight. It's a little premature to discuss that.
Next question is from David Denault from About Space Today.
Good afternoon. I'd like to see if we can get a individual consensus across the panel. We've talked about the voting. What about the risk assessment? Was it a 50-50 possibility of coming back? Was it a 75-25 decision or a 90-10 decision that Starliner would be safe?
Well, Starliner still has to come back uncrewed, right? And we believe that Starliner coming back uncrewed, although higher than the risk we'd be willing to take to put crew on it, is a reasonable thing to do to finish the test flight and gather the data that we want to gather. To give you a percentage on polling or how people feel, I think that's pretty tough to do. All I can say for sure is that when we polled today, all the people that we asked from the senior management of the different organizations that are involved with human spaceflight, they all concurred that we should have the crew come down on a different vehicle than the current Starliner.
Our next question is from Marvin Marshall from the Space Report News.
Hi, good afternoon. My question is for Administrator Nelson. I'm speaking on behalf of millions who share, the same concern. Given that SpaceX operates 4, soon to be 5 Crew Dragons and 3 Cargo Dragons that can resolve anomalies in days or weeks rather than, months or years, all while receiving, a few billion less than Boeing. So we're just, curious, why does NASA continue to support a company, with a history like this? We get the rationale was to have 2 options to ensure, reliability and redundancy, but that's what you get with SpaceX's ability to operate multiple spacecraft, quickly address anomalies, everything they do. So, again, just speaking on behalf of millions, why does NASA continue to fund Boeing?
What is your question?
Why do we continue to fund Boeing? What are the problems when SpaceX?
Is your question, why does NASA continue to fund Boeing?
Yes.
Yes.
For the obvious reason that, number one, we need 2 spacecraft to have the redundancy in case one is not available to take crew to and from the International Space Station. Number 2, this is according to an arm's length contract. and a contract that is a fixed price contract. And number three, Boeing has been a great partner for NASA over the years. As a matter of fact, the big Space Launch System, the SLS rocket, is overall managed by Boeing, and there has been a long history with Boeing. The fourth reason is that they were the successful bidder along with SpaceX, because we had wanted to. So for all those reasons, that's why NASA does business with Boeing.
So I'd also like to add, Boeing operates the space station for us as well as the prime contractor for space station, and that's in its 25th year. So we have a long and storied history with them there also.
Yeah, Boeing's been a great partner with us on space station, and I think the key word is partner. A lot of people want to focus on the contractual relationship where we're buying something from a company. This isn't completely like that, right? I mean, we have a contract with Boeing, but it's to work together to develop this capability for our country. And we've had two good partners, Boeing and SpaceX, when it comes to commercial crew. And when they have problems, we don't just throw rocks at them or tell them that we don't like them. We work with them to get through those problems.
Our next question is from Jackie Goddard from the Times of London.
Yes, hello, thank you. And just following on from that, can you help us understand why Boeing aren't here and what we're to conclude from that? You used to brief jointly. And whatever the reason may be, was there any discussion around what their absence might communicate to the public? Boeing has been adamant that Starliner is safe. You folks aren't there. We hear that the legacies of Challenger and Columbia have helped to guide your caution at NASA. So how concerned should the public be at the implication that that learning curve at Boeing possibly differs? Thank you.
Well, I'll take the first part, and it looks like Jim's getting ready to take the second part. But the reason Boeing's not here is it was a NASA decision today, crewed, uncrewed. That was the focus of this review, and so we thought it was reasonable to have just NASA on this panel. Jim, anything you want to add?
I think that's correct, Ken, and then I'd add, I think Ken and Steve have characterized that Boeing was part of the decision process. They've characterized what Boeing's position was, so and we're here to communicate the overall NASA position.
Next question is from Natalie LaRoche from the Boston Globe.
Hi there. Thank you so much, everyone, for the answers to your questions. It was mentioned earlier that their families are their pillars of strength right now. I was just wondering how apprised their families are in this whole process, and if you could describe what their spirits are during these times.
Okay, I think if I heard your question right, it was how the families are doing and how we support the families. Again, as I said previous, families are the pillars of strength and support. Their families are doing well. Their families understand, just like the crew members when they launch, there's always an opportunity, there's always a possibility that they could be up there much longer than they anticipate. So the families understand that. I'm not saying it's not hard. It is hard. It's difficult. You have to adjust for that. We have a support structure for the astronauts, and it's there to support the families and the crew members on orbit. So they're doing well. They understand, and again, we thank them for what they do.
All right, we have time for one more question. So to close this out, the last question will be from Bill Harwood from CBS News.
Yeah, thank you very much. A question for Senator Nelson, if I can. All my technical questions were answered, so I have a political question for you. There's been a lot of talk during the past few weeks that we live in an environment today where one presidential candidate is the chairman of the National Space Council, and we live in an environment where criticism is thrown about. I don't know what word to even use for it. The question is this: is there, in your mind anyway, did politics and the ramifications of this decision, if it didn't go well, play any role at all in your decision, your personal decision, Senator, about how to proceed with this? Was politics even in the back of your mind when you guys were talking about all this? Thanks.
Bill, if anyone knows, you know that NASA is not only bipartisan, it is nonpartisan. And that's the way we've tried to operate this agency as long as I've been here. I can tell you unequivocally, from a personal standpoint, that politics has not played any part in this decision. What I said earlier about Challenger and Columbia and the lessons learned and what we've tried to change in a culture in order that safety is our North Star is what we are trying to do in a very hostile environment in which if you make a mistake, it's very unforgiving. So I can tell you unequivocally, I have seen some speculation in the press that because we are in an election season, that decisions may have been made with regard to this announced today with regard to an election. Absolutely has nothing to do with it. And as long as I'm around here, it's not going to.
Thank you, Administrator, and thank you to all of our panelists today. Thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned for more information on NASA's Commercial Crew Program blog at blogs.nasa.gov/commercial crew. Have a great afternoon.
All right. Wow. So that was the decision. Oops, there you go. Hold on. Let me go back to this. So there you go. Wow. So our viewers were correct. Oops, hold on a second. Our viewers who we asked you guys before the press conference, I asked you guys, what did you think was going to happen? And you said, most of you said they're going to take the SpaceX spacecraft home and not the Boeing Starliner. Well, that is what happened. So the two astronauts who you see there in this AP story, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, they have to wait until February to come home on their mission, which was supposed to be around a week long, and it left on June 5th. They're going to wait till February to come home. They're not going to be coming home on the Boeing Starliner spacecraft, which you can see here. Oops, where is it here? There's the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. They're not coming home on that. That's going to come home empty. That's going to come home empty in September. They are going to come home on a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft that is actually flying to the space station in September. Wow. So, but Boeing, according to NASA, they're going to still keep working with Boeing on developing this Starliner spacecraft so that it can get certified to bring astronauts to and from the International Space Station like the SpaceX Crew Dragon has been doing since 2020. So I want to hear from you. What do you guys think about this decision? What did you think? Give me a shout. I'm going to read some of your comments on the air right now. At Lookner on X, you can write to me. Real quick, I want to take out my headphones. The video might pause for a second. Sometimes it pauses for a second when I take out my headphones. So give it 2 seconds to pause. You might see things pause for 2 seconds right now. Hang on. Is it going to pause? It usually does. So right now, give it a second for pause. I think we're coming back. We're coming back. There we go. Oh, also, I do want to say a thank you to Randy Hearn for your support. Thank you so much, Randy. And also Noah, thanks for your support. Noah had asked why it takes them so long to get down. There is a spacecraft, there is a SpaceX Crew Dragon craft that's currently there, but the 4 seats on that SpaceX Crew Dragon craft that's currently at the space station are already spoken for. Those 4 seats will be taken up by crew members of the space station who were already there and due to come down. So and then I guess in theory they could have sent up a special mission. I don't know all the details on this, But I don't know if in theory that there could have been a special SpaceX mission sent up to get them, but the way they're going to do it is they're going to have, they were already supposed to send a SpaceX craft there anyway. That craft is going to go with 2 astronauts instead of 4 astronauts. And then that craft those 2 astronauts will do their, I guess, 5 months on the space station, and then that SpaceX capsule will come back with the 2 crew members who went up there, and then Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore will go down with that SpaceX crew. So, yeah, I guess you could ask, why not do? I don't know the answer to this. Why not do a special mission? I could imagine different answers. Maybe if SpaceX were to do a special mission to bring just an empty spacecraft up or something to get them, that might mess up all of the plans that they normally would have to have like a regular crew on the space station. So, you can imagine. I don't have this information at hand, but maybe it's the case that if they brought a SpaceX capsule up to just get them, they couldn't bring any astronauts up for like a year or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So, and some of our viewers are mentioning cost too. So again, I don't. That's a whole other consideration. So, it's also a normal thing. There are astronauts who've been on the space station who can stay up there for like around a year. So them being up there for 8 months, you heard in the press conference, is not like a huge issue for them. So yeah, my understanding is it would be a cost benefit kind of thing. If they absolutely had to, for the safety of the astronauts, if they absolutely had to send an emergency mission up there, maybe they could, but you're talking about costs and benefits, so my guess is that it's a cost-benefits decision. That would be my guess. Anyways, let me take some comments from you guys on this. What do you guys think about all of this? At Lookner on X, and I'm going to read some comments from the chat as well. Elizabeth G said, if it were an emergency, fine, send a rescue ship. Now, ECAT points out that there's a limited number of docking ports on the space station. And, they have ports for, there are a number of ports, but they have like ports where there can be a cargo ship docked. There's currently a Soyuz spacecraft docked there, which is going to be taking some astronauts back to Earth soon. And then, according to Wikipedia, there are 4 docking. Sorry. What is it saying? I have to look this up. ISS. There are multiple ports. I want to get you an exact number about the number of ports. Here, let's see here. And they might be ports of different types. Let's see. So Wikipedia says there are 8 docking and berthing ports on the International Space Station. And they might be of different types. Let's see, blah, 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 berthing. Yeah, I don't know all about this. So I don't know that they might be certain ports can fit certain things. Some of you probably know a lot better about this, and a lot more about this than me, because I am not an expert. Let's see here. How long was the original mission scheduled to be? Around 8 days. Bengella asked that. Bengella X asked that. Also, I want to say a quick thanks for your support on Twitch. A Moment of Lovely, thank you. And Blue Pip, thanks. Let's shout out our moderators real quick too. I really appreciate our moderators being here. By the way, one of our viewers thinks it's a PR nightmare for Boeing. That's what Jaybird says. Ruth Krafasi, thanks for moderating over there on YouTube right now. Linda Belk and Larry moderate for us on X. Over on Twitch, we have moderating Hearsay, I Got That Fire, McBritches, Sarah, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev. And on Facebook, we have Christina Neal, Paul Anderson, Ava Knight, Margaret Riley, Ronald Egnor. Thank you so much to our moderators. You can see here Associated Press says, NASA decided today it's too risky to bring 2 astronauts back to Earth in Boeing's troubled new capsule. It's newly flying astronauts, but it's been in development for years and delayed for years. And they will have to wait until next year to ride home with SpaceX. What should have been a week-long test flight for the pair will now last more than 8 months. A cascade of vexing thruster failures and helium leaks in the new capsule marred their trip to the space station. The decision came down today. They will come back in a SpaceX spacecraft in February. Their empty Starliner capsule will undock in early September and attempt to return on autopilot and touch down in the New Mexico desert. It was a blow to Boeing, says AP, adding to the safety concerns plaguing the company on its airplane side. Boeing had counted on the Starliner's first crew trip to revive the troubled program after years of delays and ballooning costs. The company had insisted that Starliner was safe based on the recent thruster tests, both in space and on the ground, but NASA disagreed with them. Boeing did not participate in the call today. That was a whole interesting thing. So I'm going to talk about Boeing in a second. By the way, Rand Corp's John Osberg, a senior engineer who specializes in aerospace and defense, said NASA made the right choice, but the U.S. is still left with egg on its face due to the Starliner design issues that should have been caught earlier. So this expert is saying he thinks it's embarrassing for NASA because they, didn't catch these issues earlier. Okay, let's see here. Also, there were few options. The SpaceX capsule currently parked at the space station is reserved for the 4 residents of the space station who've been there since March. They will return in late September. Their stay extended by a month. NASA said it would be unsafe to squeeze 2 more astronauts into the SpaceX capsule that's currently there. The Russian Soyuz capsule that's at the space station is only capable of flying 3, 2 of them, and I believe all 3 people those 3 seats are taken up. So Wilmore and Williams will wait for SpaceX's next taxi flight. It's due to launch in late September with 2 astronauts instead of the usual 4 for a routine 6-month stay. Yes, NASA said no serious consideration was given to asking SpaceX for a quick standalone rescue. Last year, the Russian Space Agency had to rush up a replacement Soyuz capsule for 3 men whose original craft was damaged by space junk. The switch pushed their mission beyond a year, a U.S. space endurance record still held by Frank Rubio. They also talk in this article on AP about how Starliners had problems for years. Bad software fouled the first test flight without a crew in 2019, prompting a do-over in 2022. Then parachute and other issues cropped up, including a helium leak in the capsule's propellant system that nixed a launch attempt in May. The leak was eventually deemed to be isolated and small enough to pose no concern, but more leaks sprouted following liftoff and 5 thrusters also failed. Okay. And again, we heard in the press conference, NASA said the big concern was the thrusters. They just didn't have the confidence they needed that the thrusters would perform the way they needed to on a return trip for a return manned trip for Starliner. And look at this here. NASA, blah, 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 blah. Boeing has gotten bogged down in design flaws that set the company back more than $1 billion. NASA officials still hold out hope that Starliner's problems can be corrected in time for another crew flight in another year or so. You heard NASA say in the press conference, they're on a fixed price contract. So NASA is only contracted to pay Boeing so much money, and then Boeing has to keep paying for this. And did somebody in the press conference say that it's cost Boeing $1.4 million already? $1.4 billion already? Is that what was said? Let me just get you that. Does it say here? Yes, Wikipedia says Boeing has lost more than $1.5 billion in budget overruns on the Starliner project, which has been marred by delays, management issues, and engineering challenges. And by the way, here is what Boeing had to say. Boeing, during that press conference, shortly after the press conference began, yes, this was posted shortly after the press conference began. Boeing Space posted, they said, during today's agency flight readiness review, NASA decided to autonomously return, autonomously means by itself, not crewed, autonomously return Starliner from the International Space Station. And Boeing said, we continue to focus first and foremost on the safety of the crew and spacecraft. We are executing the mission as determined by NASA, and we are preparing the spacecraft for a safe and a successful uncrewed return. I'd kind of like to cover that. If we have video of that, I would love to cover the uncrewed return of the spacecraft, in addition, of course, to the return of the spacecraft, the SpaceX spacecraft carrying the two astronauts who are stuck there now, and two other astronauts. I'd love to cover that in February. But it was interesting that Boeing was not at the, I thought it was a very good question that was asked. Why isn't Boeing at the press conference? And the answer given was something to the effect of like, well, it was NASA's decision, so we figured like we should be the ones doing it. I don't know. It struck me as kind of weird that they weren't there personally. Personally, given that it's a Boeing spacecraft and they are a partner and you're announcing this big decision, I would think the public would like to know via the press what Boeing thinks about this and ask Boeing some questions about this. But they weren't there, so what can I say? Anyways, I want to read some more comments from you guys here. Sapphire Artist says, what was the mission of this spacecraft? This was the first crewed mission of this spacecraft. And the goal is to get this, the goal is to test it enough so that NASA signs off on it and certifies it for regular missions taking astronauts to and from the International Space Station. I think maybe there was only, I think that what they were hoping, if I remember right, I believe what they were hoping is if this mission went well, that they would be able to certify it after this mission. That if this mission went perfectly well, you know, that NASA could afterwards look at the data and say, it's good to go. So I don't know that for sure. I believe I remember reading that before, but don't hold me to that. But the point is to test it because NASA wants to use this spacecraft as one of two spacecraft to bring people to and from the space station. But they haven't signed off on it yet. This was a test flight. So basically it was to see if everything would go okay, taking astronauts to and from the space station. Clearly everything did not go okay. Kaltenberg says new plan 3 flights to test. I have to look up what the I wonder if I can find it, but I really thought at some point I read that the original plan was to just have one crewed test flight, and this is about the flight here. June 5th, humans in space. Mission overview. Yes, I am correct. See? NASA's Boeing Crew Flight Test Mission Overview. I mean, I shouldn't get that much credit. I'm just literally remembering something I read before. As the final flight test for Starliner, NASA's Boeing Crew Flight Test will validate the transportation system, including the launch pad, rocket, spacecraft, in-orbit operational capabilities, and return to Earth with astronauts aboard. So this was supposed to be the final test flight for according to NASA, according to this page, for the spacecraft. But I don't know now. One of our viewers mentioned they might do multiple tests, flights. I don't know if that's been determined yet. I also don't know. According to AP, the current space station is supposed to work until 2030 and then be dismantled in 2030. So would this spacecraft work with a future space station, or is it only meant to work with the current space station? Because at a certain point, they're going to run out of time to bring people to and from there. But maybe it would work with future space stations. I don't know. Hey, thanks to Berenico for your support, and also Blissy for your support. Oh, thanks Zach A for your support, and Senator Funstein for your support as well. Now, Zach A. Senator Funstein says, some of the reporter questions got heated, and so did Bill. Can you show some of those again? I may not show it again because, to be honest, it's been a kind of a long stream, and it was over an hour press conference. So I'm not. I would just say if you missed it, you can go watch it. I mean, if there's a specific one you want to request, you can write to me and request it. But just to be perfectly honest with you, there were a lot of questions. So I'm not that excited by the prospect of just lengthening it more by showing the questions and answers again. Some of you might not like me giving that answer, but I'll be honest with you. That's my honest response to that question. I'd rather take the time on the stream to hear some of your comments. And also, I do want to talk for a bit about this new SpaceX flight that's coming up very shortly, which I think we might do some coverage of possibly a civilian spacewalk. So I want to mention that as well. So anyways, Senator Funstein, I appreciate the request, but I just want to be honest with you as to why I might not grant your request. And I don't mind that they took a lot of questions, by the way. I'm all for them taking more questions, but just in terms of this broadcast. Also, Zach A. mentioned Polymarket. So was there a betting on Polymarket as to whether they would come home sooner or later? I would not be surprised. Let me go look this up here. Oops, you know what? I got to fix the headline here. That's Polymarket. I'm going to look at that in a second. Hold on. Let me fix the headline. I got to fix the headline. One moment here. Let me just do this the right way. So, because I didn't fix the headline before. Here's the headline. Ooh. I got to fix it there. I got to fix it there. And I got to fix it here. Let's see. Okay, so here's Polymarket. Do they have a betting line on this? I'm looking it up. I'm not seeing it. Let's see. I just searched Starliner and Boeing and NASA on Polymarket, and I don't see it anywhere. So maybe there was one there. Well, I'm not seeing it. Zach A. said there was some sort of, suggested there was some sort of Polymarket bet on it, but I'm literally searching on Polymarket and I'm not seeing anything there about it. So maybe I'm misinterpreting what Zach said. But I just searched all those things. Boeing, Starliner, and NASA on Polymarket, and nothing came up. Let's see here. Are the Russians still there, or did they leave? I believe there are 2 Russian astronauts on board who are going to come back on Soyuz in September, if I have that right. Yeah, I think there are 7. There are 2 up there now. Yes, there are 2 Russian crew members right now who are going to be flying on the docked Soyuz capsule back to Earth. Hey, I want to mention this too. Because this is interesting. I wasn't really keeping up with this. It's very interesting. So, is it Tuesday morning? On Tuesday early morning. Speaking of space stuff. On Tuesday early morning, a SpaceX mission will launch carrying 4 civilians, and I believe it's supposed to be they're supposed to do the first civilian spacewalk, if I have that right. Do I have that right? Let's see here. It says risky spacewalk. First ever private spacewalk right here. This is from Reuters. Musk's SpaceX testing breakthrough in risky spacewalk. SpaceX's attempt at the first ever private spacewalk next week will be a test of trailblazing equipment, including slim spacesuits and a cabin with no airlock, in one of the riskiest missions yet for Elon Musk's space company. So, I would like to cover the spacewalk if there's video of it. We maybe end up covering that. A billionaire entrepreneur, a retired military fighter pilot, and 2 SpaceX employees are poised to launch on Tuesday aboard a modified Crew Dragon craft. That's the same. The Crew Dragon goes to and from the space station too. Before embarking on a 20-minute spacewalk, 434 miles into space 2 days later. Until now, walking into the empty expanse of space has only been attempted by government astronauts on the International Space Station, 250 miles above Earth. SpaceX's 5-day mission, dubbed Polaris Dawn, will swing in an oval-shaped orbit, blah, 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 blah. It'll go as far as 870 miles from Earth, the farthest any humans will have ventured since the end of the United States Apollo program in 1972. Crew members, including billionaire Jared Isaacman, will don SpaceX's new slimline spacesuits in a Crew Dragon vehicle that was modified so it can open its hatch door in the vacuum of space, an unusual process that removes the need for an airlock. They're pushing the envelope in multiple ways, said retired NASA astronaut Garrett Reisman. They're also going to a much higher altitude with a more severe radiation environment than we've been to since Apollo. The mission has been bankrolled by one of the crew members, Isaacman, the founder of electronic payment company Shift4. He has declined to say how much he has spent, but it is estimated to be over $100 million. Joining him will be mission pilot Scott Boteet, a retired U.S. Air Force lieutenant colonel, and 2 SpaceX employees, Sarah Gillis and Anna Menon, both senior engineers at the company. Wow. So, look at this. Far outside the protective bubble of Earth's atmosphere, the electronics and shielding on Crew Dragon and spacesuits will be tested as they pass through parts of the Van Allen belt, an area where charged particles streaming mainly from the sun can disrupt satellites' electronics and affect human health. That's an additional risk you don't face when you just stay in low Earth orbit and go up to the International Space Station, Reisman said. Wow. And the spacewalk, which I would like to cover if there's video of it and I have access to it, the spacewalk, the first private spacewalk ever, will take place on the mission's 3rd day, but preparation for it will begin about 45 hours in advance. This is really interesting. The gumdrop-shaped Crew Dragon's entire cabin will be depressurized and exposed to the vacuum of space. There's no airlock. While only 2 of the astronauts will float outside, tethered by an oxygen line, the whole crew will depend on their spacesuits for life support. Unbelievable. That's this coming week. Days before the spacewalk, the crew will begin a pre-breathe process to fill the cabin with pure oxygen and remove any nitrogen from the air. Nitrogen, if present in the astronauts' bloodstreams in space, could form bubbles, block blood flow, and lead to decompression sickness known as the bends, as with scuba divers who return too quickly to the water surface. The crew will use an ultrasound device to monitor any bubble formation, one of many tools to be used in the mission to inform dozens of scientific experiments, providing researchers with a rare peek into how astronauts might fare on the moon's surface or elsewhere in deep space. Okay. While astronaut safety on NASA missions is rigorously overseen by NASA, there are no such U.S. standards or laws for spaceflight safety in private missions like this one. SpaceX officials and Polaris crew said during a news conference Monday that they have planned for an array of contingency scenarios if something during the mission goes wrong, such as an oxygen leak or a failure to reseal the hatch door, but they did not detail what those were. Reisman says he knows the Polaris crew and believes they are prepared to handle any unexpected mishaps, but there's not a lot of room for error, he said. Anyways, that is super interesting. So we're not covering this right now, but I wanted to mention it because we're covering a space story, and this is going to happen. This crew is supposed to launch early Tuesday morning. I don't know if we'll cover the launch. Maybe we will. Who knows, because it's such an interesting story. But they're supposed to launch, and about 2 days later, they're going to they're going to expose the entire cabin to space, depressurize the cabin. They're all going to be living on, using their spacesuits for life support. And then 2 of them are going to go outside the spacecraft, and it's going to be the first private spacewalk ever. Wow. Wow. Let me just see something real quick here. I might even have a little video to show you about this. I'm going to show you a little video. Oh, I have like a 1-minute video I can show you. Let me do that. Let's show you the 1-minute video. Oh, I might have 2 videos. Is it 1? Let's see. No, here we go. Let's watch this Reuters video that goes with this article. I want to see it. Hang on, I'm going to play it for you right now. Why not? Let's play it. Let's play it. Okay, here it is. Oh, there's music on it. There's music on it. No, but the music should be fine because let me make sure here. I might just nobody's narrating. Here's how I'll do it. Here's how I'll do it. We'll mute it. We can read. There's no narrator. So here is this video from Reuters. So let's just watch this. It says, oops, sorry. I'm trying to, why is it playing? There should be no music. Let's do it this way. Here we go. SpaceX's Polaris Dawn, one of its risky missions yet, will test new tech in the first ever private spacewalk. Look at this. It's coming up this week. The new technology includes slim spacesuits in a cabin with no airlock. Oh, and then Garrett R., former NASA astronaut, says, let's hear what he has to say. Garrett R.
Not only for the, the pushing the envelope and getting the capability for the spacesuits, but also all the science they're doing. I forgot how many, but they have, a ridiculous number of experiments that they're conducting using their bodies as guinea pigs to provide data to scientific researchers on the ground.
That was Garrett Reisman. And then, just to show you here the rest of the video. A billionaire entrepreneur, a retired military pilot, and 2 SpaceX employees are sent to launch on August 27th. Wow. I think that's a really interesting story. So, again, that is, John Phelps says Tuesday 3:38 a.m. launch. That's what John says. It's supposed to be Tuesday early morning. Maybe we'll cover that. I might even cover that Tuesday. I might cover the launch. But remember, it's not like you see the launch and then they do the spacewalk right after. It's the launch, and then they get to space, and then they prepare for 45 hours. So it's about 2 days after the launch is when the spacewalk is going to be. Wow. So, anyways, I know it wasn't the story we were covering the stream is on, but I figured it's about space. It's interesting, and you guys might want to know something about it. And I would definitely like to do some coverage of this. So I'll be keeping an eye out for that. I know the Reuters said that the launch they had, estimated launch time, our viewer was correct, is 3:38 a.m. on Tuesday morning Eastern time. Steffi says exciting. So we very well might have some coverage of that this week. Morph Retro and X says historic. Gary Eckert says, who is being bumped from the SpaceX? By the way, that was a Reuters article again, as you could see there. Gary says, here's another Reuters article, SpaceX to return Boeing Starliner astronauts from space next year. Who are the 2 astronauts who are being bumped from the SpaceX Crew Dragon that was supposed to go with 4 astronauts to the space station, but now it's going to take 2. That I don't know. And actually, in the press conference, I believe one of the people speaking said that they're still determining who's going on the SpaceX craft up. So I believe that's not public knowledge, and it might not have even been decided who's going on the spacecraft and who on the SpaceX spacecraft going to the space station, which astronauts maybe would have gone but aren't going. Okay. Fweeky Beat says, this is the future, stranded in space. It happens all the time. Reuters says Boeing struggled for years to develop Starliner, a gumdrop-shaped capsule that designed to compete with Crew Dragon as a second U.S. option for sending astronaut crews to and from Earth's orbit. And the basic summary of what happened is, since Starliner docked to the ISS in June, Boeing has scrambled to investigate what caused its thruster mishaps and helium leaks on the test flight that took the astronauts there. The company arranged tests and simulations on Earth to gather data that Boeing has used to try to convince NASA officials that Starliner is safe to fly the crew back home, but results from the testing raised more difficult engineering questions and ultimately failed to quell NASA officials' concerns about Starliner's ability to make its crewed return trip, the most daunting and complex part of the test mission. All right, I'll take a few more comments from you guys about this. The astronauts will be returning on a SpaceX capsule in February, and the Boeing spacecraft will be coming back uncrewed in September, which again I would like to cover. Hold on a second. Our viewer, HomeAware, says they keep talking about the thrusters and all the technology. What about the 2 astronauts' lives and how they survive and get back home? Well, and they have repeatedly said that the crew is the focus. I mean, the reason that they're so concerned about the thrusters is that the thrusters need to work to get the crew to come back safely. HomeAware says, get them home and stop talking technical rubbish. Well, so I guess HomeAwares thinks that maybe in the press conference they should have talked more about the people, but at the same time, just to be clear, I think what they're trying to do is they want the public to understand some of these technical issues. They want the public to know what's going on. So, but I've seen nothing from NASA or Boeing that makes me think that they are not prioritizing the crew. But as our viewer JD says, it is very technical. Nick Robinson sent me an article from MarketWatch saying about, do NASA astronauts get overtime pay in space? And MarketWatch says that there is no overtime pay, and there's no overtime pay. Yes, a NASA spokesperson said to MarketWatch that astronauts do not get overtime or holiday weekend pay. They get paid for a 40-hour work week, i.e. their regular salaries. But their transportation, lodging, and meals are all provided. They get an incidentals amount for each day they're in space. Anyways, so they have according to NASA's website, their annual salary is roughly $150,000. So this is a NASA website here, Becoming an Astronaut, Frequently Asked Questions. And annual salary is $152,258 per year. So they're on salary. They're on a salary. So Smoker says only $150,000. Yeah, I mean, well, look, I also don't know, can they make extra money by doing, if you're a NASA astronaut, I don't know how this works. Can you make extra money by, say, going on speaking tours, speaking at companies, outings and stuff like that? So there might be ways, I don't know this, but there might be ways for them to make money off of, not that they want to do it for this, but I mean, I'm all for it. If somebody wants to pay them to speak after they're an astronaut, that's fine with me. Let them make their money. So, maybe they could be motivational speakers or do, appearances or that kind of thing. Or maybe as an astronaut, they can work as a consultant for some space company or something. You know what I'm saying? So look, I understand what people are saying. It's like, wow, they're risking their lives going up there and they make $150,000. Not to sneeze at $150,000, but some of you think they should make more. But at the same time, and that's an interesting question. At the same time, I don't know if there might be financial benefits to them that come from having the job. I do not know. It's an interesting topic. Maybe they get good benefits and a good pension. I don't know. I'll actually post, I'm going to post a link to this page. I'm going to post a link to the Being an Astronaut FAQ page. I'll post a link in the chat and you guys can look at this page if you want. Okay, a driver is watching live from Manchester, England. All right, we'll take a few more comments here, It's a very interesting general field and topic. Let's see here. That was a good. I was going to check my messages. That was a good question, by the way. Thanks to Nick for messaging me with that. I appreciate that. Nick Robinson. Let's see here. I'm just looking at some of the other comments people have sent me. John Phelps, our viewer, writes in, and I understand what John is saying. He says, I feel sorry for the 2 SpaceX astronauts getting bumped in February to make room for the stowaways. Stowaways? Well, stowaways imply, I know what you're saying. I think a stowaway would imply that like you're secretly sneaking on board. But what you're basically saying is yes, There are 2 astronauts who are going to get bumped who would have gotten to go. I mean, you might say, well, that's part of being an astronaut, but it's still a bummer for them, certainly. I agree with you. That is too bad. Our viewer, Dean R. White, said, I love the apparent humility by NASA. Can Starship be quickly rigged to bring down the bottom pack of Starliner? Can Starship be quickly rigged to bring down the bottom pack of Starliner? So I'm a little unsure about the question exactly, what you're exactly asking, but it sounds like your concern is with Starliner coming back down, but Starliner is able to fly down on its own without crew, autonomously. So without trying to figure out the question, unless I'm missing something, I think the basic idea of the question is getting down Starliner. So whether in theory one spacecraft could like tow the other, I don't know for sure. My guess is that would present all kinds of difficulties. But Starliner can get down on its own. The Starliner does not need to be crewed, in theory. So, oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking Crew Dragon. I was thinking about Crew Dragon, not Starship. I was thinking it was, can Crew Dragon be rigged? Starship. What is the Starship? I have to remind myself. Have we covered Starship? SpaceX Starship. That's we've covered Starship. Yeah, we've covered this whole thing. Starship is the most massive. It's a fully reusable heavy lift launch vehicle under development by SpaceX. All right. Anyways, SpaceX has developed Starship with the intention of lowering launch costs using economies of scale. Starship is the latest project in SpaceX's reusable launch system development program and plan to colonize Mars. It has the Super Heavy booster in the SpaceX Starship spacecraft. Anyways, I don't want to get off too much on a tangent, but the bottom line, you can read more about this on Wikipedia, SpaceX Starship. The bottom line is that Starliner will be flown back without a crew, I believe in September, and I would like to cover that. Okay. Sorry, I misread, or I didn't fully appreciate what was being asked. Thank you to Dean for the question. Okay. I see. Maybe the viewer was asking about the cargo area. I think that's what it is, right? Because Starship does have a cargo area. I remember that. One of our viewers just mentioned. Addie mentioned this. Addie says that's a big no. Starship has no cargo area yet. Didn't we watch a SpaceX test flight, a Starship test flight, where they tested the cargo bay? Anyways, maybe that's what Dean was asking about. I don't really want to get off on a tangent on Starship, but I do remember covering SpaceX Starship test flight where you can see here variants from the Wikipedia article. Starship is planned to have a large cargo door that will open to release payloads. Okay. Maybe they haven't fully developed that yet or whatever. Anyways, I don't want to get off on that tangent. Read about SpaceX Starship. It's really interesting if you want to on Wikipedia, for example. You can check that out there. Gary Eckert says Starship will have a cargo area. Right now it's all tanks. Well, there you go. That's what Gary says. So anyways, thank you, Gary. But interesting question. All right. Is there anything else I wanted to mention here? I think we're getting close. I think we're getting close to that time, guys. I think we're getting close to that time. So look, coming up, we have, so in February, the SpaceX Crew, in February, the 2 astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, who who went to the space station on January 5th. Their flight launched on January 5th. It was supposed to be like a week mission. They're still up there. They went on the Boeing Starliner. They can't come back, and they're going to come back in February on a SpaceX Crew Dragon. That SpaceX Crew Dragon, which is going to take them back, is leaving in September, going up there in September. So I assume, I definitely would like to cover that next February. And if I remember right, the Starliner itself is going to come home autonomously in September. Yes. AP says the empty Starliner capsule will undock in early September, and attempt to return on autopilot. So if I have video of that, I will cover that because I think that's very interesting. And we also have, don't forget, coming up this week, SpaceX is launching a mission early Tuesday morning of 4 people, which is supposed to have the first private spacewalk ever, which I also would like to cover if I have video for the spacewalk. I don't know if we will. Maybe we'll cover it. As long as I have something to show you during the spacewalk, we'll cover that. We might cover the launch, I'm not sure. That's a whole other interesting story. So all this space stuff happening right now. But anyways, so that's to come. Put it on your calendar. And but I think for right, if you missed the NASA press conference, they gave a whole full press conference, news conference on their decision why they don't want to use the Boeing Starliner that took the astronauts up to the space station to bring them back down. There's an issue with the thrusters. They haven't figured out everything they want to figure out about the thrusters, basically, and don't have confidence that that the thrusters will work. But they talked a lot about it in the press conference. So if you missed it, you can rewind this broadcast and watch the whole news conference. I think it was over an hour. Yeah, so and so that's what's going on. Anyways, we're going to start wrapping this stream. But I really appreciate you guys being here for this stream. There's all kinds of news going on. If there's other big news later today, we'll cover it. By the way, just quickly to mention this, I haven't really had time to look into this, but Michael Horowitz, who I follow, he is a security analyst. And Michael Horowitz and others. Michael is an international geopolitical analyst. He and others have reported that ISIS have claimed the stabbing attack in Germany. Michael said the group says the attacker is a soldier of the Islamic State and attacked a Christian gathering and carried out the attack out of revenge for Muslims in Palestine and elsewhere. Now, I'm not sure that that's true, but ISIS is claiming this, apparently. So I wanted to just let you know about that. And if we did a stream on that last night, that stabbing attack. And I believe the stabber is still being searched for. Yes, look, I can just show you. Look, I actually can show you this right now, real quick. Right here. AP, Islamic State group claims responsibility for a knife attack in Solingen, Germany that killed 3. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for it. The group said claimed the attacker targeted Christians and as a soldier of the Islamic State who carried out the attack to avenge Muslims in Palestine and elsewhere and everywhere. Police began raiding a home for asylum seekers in the city center of Solingen, including with special forces, the German news agency DPA reported. We have received tips and therefore we are currently conducting police activities, the police spokesperson said. They have not taken the suspect into custody yet. A 15-year-old boy was arrested early Saturday. Police said he was suspected of knowing about the planned attack and failing to inform authorities, but he was not the attacker. Authorities have not found the perpetrator yet. Anyways, maybe we'll do an update on this, but I don't want to get into that now. That's not what we're covering here, but I'm just throwing that out there. And I already posted about it on my X account a little while ago. But just in case you hadn't heard, I post breaking news stuff on my X account, which is @Lookner on X, @Lookner. Follow me there for breaking news updates, @Lookner on X. I will post a link to my X account right now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to wrap up this live stream, and more space coverage to come, more news coverage to come. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in to the live stream and joining me for this announcement in the news conference. And we'll cover more news soon. This is Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda. So subscribe, follow Agenda Free TV, and turn notifications on. I really, most of the time I don't know when I'm coming on the air because breaking news happens at all times. So you can sign up for our notifications where you sign up once, it's free, and you get sent a notification every time we go live. It works really great. We do it through Discord. The moderators will post the link to the notifications in the chat right now. And you can find that link on the Facebook and YouTube, in the Facebook and YouTube description for this video. Hey, so I really appreciate you coming. Thanks for letting me read your comments on the air, and those people participating in the chat, thank you, and for sending me news updates and sharing your space knowledge with me. I am not an expert. What else was I going to mention? I was also going to mention something else. Oh, huge thanks to our moderators. Shout out to them. They are the best. They're always here in the chat rooms, keeping the chat civil and respectful. So huge shout out to our moderators. We could not have the chat rooms without them. Ruth Krafasi has been here. Thanks so much, Ruth, over there on YouTube. Sabrina, thank you, Sabrina, and all of our other YouTube moderators. Linda Belk and Larry on X. Our Twitch moderators, thank you so much. I got that fire. McBritches, Sarah, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev, thank you. Our Facebook moderators, people like Christina Neal, Margaret Riley, Ava Knight, Paul Anderson, Ronald Egnor. Thanks to all of our moderators. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who donated. So nice of you. You are the ones who allow this channel to exist, to be available full-time to cover breaking news. That is thanks to you. So I really appreciate your support. Thanks to everybody who donated. If you'd ever like to donate, you can go to agendafree.tv. Agendafree.tv. Sorry, my mind is not working. If you go to Agenda Free TV, well, you could go there, and there might be a donation link on the page. But what I meant to say is go to Agenda Free. Oh no, I did say it right. See, this is when I know that the stream has gone on too long. When I thought of it, I thought I just said go to Agenda Free TV, but I didn't. I said agendafree.tv. My brain has stopped working. It has officially stopped working. This is why we need to end the stream. I need to eat something. I thought I told you go to Agenda Free TV, which would not really make much sense. Okay, anyways. Yeah, air fryer time. Well, I'm going to eat something. Okay, hey, I mentioned, the Discord chat. At the link to the notifications, you can also check out our Discord chat, where you can chat with other viewers when we're not live. A lot of our viewers like doing that. So check out the free Discord chat at the same link as the notifications. Thanks to our Discord mods, by the way. Much appreciated Discord mods. And what else did I want to mention? Oh, a quick reminder for those people who watch us and subscribe on YouTube. If you want to turn on the YouTube notifications, which I would suggest doing is another way to find out when we're going live, you don't have to just subscribe on YouTube. You got to subscribe, and then if you subscribe on YouTube, you got to click this bell, the notifications bell, and choose all notifications. Make sure you do that on YouTube to get the notifications from YouTube. Okay, I want to say a quick thank you too. Oh, and real quick, I do have a personal channel. When it's not so busy with the news, I do some non-news live streaming. My personal channel is Lookner on YouTube and Looknerd with a D on Twitch. We'll be back there eventually, so if you want to, you can check out some of my non-news live streams that have happened over there, and we'll do more on there over there soon. Hey, big thanks to our Facebook subscribers for your support. Very much appreciated. People like Eve Richards, Diane Allworth, Margaret Riley, Kay Lowry Body, Robert Rial II, Billy Joe Drage, all of our subscribers over there. Jane Summers on Facebook. Thank you so much. Did I say Margaret Riley? Thanks to all of our subscribers there and our other subscribers on Facebook. Our Twitch subscribers, big thanks to you like Gonzalez, McBritches, Fweeky Beats, Shaggy, Wall Street, Relila, Annie Cush, Blue Pip. Thank you for subscribing. Glen Tech 1 and Sandy Doggo. And by the way, Sandy Doggo says better to come home in February than drift off into space. Thank you to all, and all of our other Twitch subscribers as well. I appreciate it. And also our YouTube members. Thanks for your support, like NJ Prepper, Serenity, Waltham, Joe Hart, Toby Network, The Lucky Minute, Jesse's Girl, Cruella, Green Giant, Paula Faust, Barry, Winding Road, Bama Fan, J.K. Cedar, Sarah Milligan, Cherry Sour, Down Under, Veggie Garden Diaries, Praise the Oak, Deeper Understanding. Thanks for being YouTube members, Roger Shoemaker, and J.K. Cedar, and Head Crab, Randy J., JD, and all of our other YouTube members, thank you. And all of our other viewers, like They Call Me Taj, and Freed Speaks, and Neuromance27, and Robert Kennedy, and Audrey Burbank, and Janet Saxon Peck, Janet Jude Peck, and Deborah Hennessy, and others. All right, guys, we are wrapping this up. And Miles Connor, thanks for people watching on X, like Miles Connor and all of our other X viewers. Okay, so I am wrapping this up. Appreciate you joining us for the NASA announcement announcing that the 2 astronauts from the Boeing Starliner will not take the Starliner back home from the space station. They're going to be stuck there till February, when they will take a SpaceX spacecraft home, and the Starliner will attempt to come back on its own without a crew in September, which I hope to cover. That is it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.